Hope, the agreement is a pragmatic attempt to unify the church in China and make peace with the state. For the Chinese government, it's a chance to integrate Catholics in a common Chinese identity and perhaps to remove the threat, as they see it, of an underground dissenting community. Whether the 2018 agreement and its likely renewal is a bridge to a better future for China's millions of Catholics, only time will tell. This edition of The Inquiry was presented by me, William Crawley, produced by Jill Collins, researched by Matt Toulson. The editor was Tara McDermott, and the technical producer, Craig Boardman.
That was The Inquiry from the BBC. I'm Saroja Coelho here on CBC Radio 1. Have a great day.
Good morning, Manitoba, and hello, Winnipeg. I'm Mercy Marcusa. We are live downtown with Information Radio. Thanks for joining us for the Wednesday morning show on 89.3 FM, 990 AM, on the app, on YouTube. Morning, everybody. Nice shot of the sky out there. It is dark and chilly. Of course, it's 3 minutes to 6 a.m., and it's 11 degrees, so a little cooler, actually, even than yesterday. Today's high in Winnipeg, 26 degrees, lots of sunshine, so we start cooler, but we end warmer than we were yesterday. Thanks for joining us. Let's say hello to the team. Brad Lilly's in the control room. Good morning, Brad. Good morning to Chloe Friesen, who's also there. Chloe is directing the program, and we'll talk to her on air. She covers the commute. We will also be hearing from Mr. Abby Adiyemi, who covers weather on the program and is behind the controls, as he is every morning. Megan Ketchison is back this morning as well, and she's here with our news headlines to get started. Hi, Megan.
Hi there. Well, a judge will hear today from family members of a Winnipeg serial killer's victims. It's part of the formal sentencing process for 37-year-old Jeremy Skibitsky. He was found guilty last month of 4 counts of first-degree murder. The convictions carry an automatic life sentence with no chance of parole for at least 25 years. And a special advisor has been appointed at a Steinbach school division that recently faced criticism from parents. The Hanover School Board got into hot water in April after passing a hiring policy that some parents called discriminatory. And we'll find out who it is coming up at 6:30.
All right. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Well, I want to talk about what is happening this morning in court. We are going to hear this morning about that community impact statement that Megan was just mentioning. A local MMIWG advocacy group wrote it. They will read it in court later today, but we're going to have an interview that we'll hear that was given to CBC by one of the people that was involved with putting it together and has long been involved with Justice for the Families. And so stay tuned. That is all coming up in special coverage just before 8 o'clock. You'll also hear more national news about this in a moment here at 6 a.m. In addition, today is the first day of the Paralympic Games. The opening ceremonies this afternoon. So we're going to cheer, not only cheer for the Manitoba athletes, we are going to reach one of them. Winnipeg's Leanne Taylor is going to join us live this morning. She is in Paris, and we'll hear more about her goals in para-triathlon. So stay tuned for that interview live after 7. And a little bit later, back to school and back to a new nursery school in Winnipeg. It's a new forest nursery school. We'll hear all about it. Stay with us.
On cue.
I was 17 years old when I saw my people on the roads bumping Punjabi music.
I'm Ali Hassan, sitting in for Tom Power. Rapper and singer Karan Aujla made history as the first Punjabi artist to win a Juno Award. But he was a global superstar well before that, topping the charts with Punjabi raps over classic hip-hop and trap beats.
Q, this morning at 10, 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Rebecca Zandbergen in Ottawa. We begin in Winnipeg and a sentencing hearing for a convicted serial killer set for later today. Jeremy Skibitsky is expected to get 4 life sentences for the murders of 4 Indigenous women. And for their families, today will also provide the opportunity to confront their loved one's killer. Cameron McIntosh reports.
Society can compartmentalize an issue.
So for Indigenous women's advocate Sandra Delaron, the chance to get an impact statement along with family and friends of 4 murdered Indigenous women on the record in court is profound.
We have an opportunity as a community to talk about what this case has meant to all of us in terms of our safety.
Jeremy Skibitsky was convicted last month of 4 counts of first-degree murder. for killing Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, and a fourth woman known as Buffalo Woman. Skibitsky dismembered their remains and threw them in the garbage.
This victim impact statement from the community recognizes that it's never just one family.
Skibitsky will receive 4 mandatory concurrent life sentences with no parole eligibility for 25 years, making this hearing more of a formality, says lawyer Scott Newman.
It's more to bring both that healing component and to the family and friends of the victim, and to attempt to send a message to the accused.
Meanwhile, a search is about to begin for the remains of 2 of the women believed to be buried in a Winnipeg area landfill. Their families long insisting justice includes finding those remains. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
And in the occupied West Bank, clashes heard from a distance as Israeli security forces carry out a major military operation. At least 9 people have been killed, according to Palestinian health authorities. The simultaneous Israeli raids targeted at least 4 Palestinian cities. This Palestinian paramedic says the refugee camp in Tubas was raided by a large number of Israeli soldiers, and there were armed clashes inside the Jenin refugee camp. The city of Jenin itself has been sealed off. There have also been several airstrikes. The Israeli operation in the West Bank is believed to be the largest in decades. Kamala Harris and her running mate Tim Walz are on the campaign trail in Georgia today, but people living anywhere will be able to hear the pair speak tomorrow. Their first interview as the Democratic ticket is set to air, and the CBC's Katie Nicholson will be watching it. She is in Washington for us. Harris has been facing a lot of pressure to get on the record. Where is this all coming from?
Well, yeah, notably from Republicans. This has been one of their stronger attack lines on Harris, that she hasn't done an in-depth interview or really sat down with reporters since becoming the nominee. Donald Trump seizing upon this point, noting multiple times he's always willing to talk to reporters. And political analysts have also been very clear Harris can't win this race on raw enthusiasm. The DNC gave her a big surge in energy and money, but she needs to define herself and her positions and policy. And beyond that, she also needs to get into some of the nuts and bolts of how her policies are going to work. And there isn't even a policy framework up on their website yet. So this interview will be key to further defining herself and her agenda and explaining changes in policy. For example, in 2019, she was in favor of a fracking ban. That's not going to play well in Pennsylvania, which most people agree she needs to win in 2024. And even though she did walk that position back when she became Biden's running mate, it still raises questions about what she truly believes. So Harris has been tacking more to the center since becoming the nominee. And the challenge here in this interview will be appealing to more centrist, independent, and Republican voters who are on the fence, and that small but crucial number of undecideds out there, without losing the support of the left flank of her party.
Okay, Katie, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Katie Nicholson in Washington. A verdict is expected today in the sexual assault case of a former high-ranking member of the Canadian military. Retired Vice Admiral Hayden Edmondson stood trial in February. He's accused of rape on board a Canadian Navy ship more than 30 years ago. It is a landmark case. It's the first of its kind being tried outside the military justice system. Kayla Hounsell has the latest.
I hope the significance is to provide a better sense of confidence and trust by the victims.
Retired Colonel Michel Drapeau specializes in military law. He's been following the case of retired Vice Admiral Hayden Edmondson closely and says regardless of the verdict, this is an important moment as one of the first cases of military sexual assault to be transferred to the civilian justice system.
It puts the victims and the accused of sexual assault trial on an equal footing with all other Canadians having to face the same challenge. I see that as a major step forward.
Edmondson was charged in 2021 with 1 count of sexual assault and 1 count of committing indecent acts, one of several high-ranking military members accused of sexual misconduct that year. Edmondson's trial took place over 8 days in February. Stephanie Vio, who asked for a publication ban on her name to be lifted, told the court she was 19 when Edmondson first exposed himself to her and later assaulted her in his sleeping quarters on board a Canadian Navy ship in 1991. She first told her story to CBC News 9 months before Edmondson was charged.
He removed all my clothes, and then he turned me around and he raped me. There's no other way to say it.
Edmondson has pleaded not guilty and denied having any kind of sexual contact with VO. A judge is expected to deliver his verdict today. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Ottawa.
BC is now the latest province to ban cell phones in classrooms as kids across the country begin the new school year. But as Yvette Brend reports, rules around phone use in schools are hardly consistent across Canada.
But the bottom line is that the phones are not going to be out in the classroom.
Grandmother Linda Hunter applauds BC Premier David Eby's plan.
The phone should stay in the locker or in the coat or something, and there's other things to do, way more interesting things to do than be on a phone.
But rules aren't consistent across Canada. Phones are banned in elementary schools in some provinces like Saskatchewan and Nova Scotia, but allowed for older students outside of class time in Ontario and Manitoba. Alberta has a province-wide policy, but districts have until next year to iron out details. Jason Schilling, president of the Alberta Teachers Association, says educators are confused.
There's concerns about, well, if I have to confiscate a phone, if a student won't get off the phone, then what kind of supports and backup are there for me as a teacher when that should occur?
And experts like Cara Brisson-Bovan of MediaSmart say bans don't teach digital safety, something Canada used to be a leader in doing.
That leadership has shifted over time.
For parents, news their child will be off screens at school is a relief.
Yes, finally something great.
East Vancouver father of two, Daniel Penn, hopes new bans empower schools to just say no when it comes to cell phones in class. Yvette Brend, CBC News, Vancouver.
Well, in a few hours, the Olympic cauldron in Paris will be lit again. The 2024 Paralympic Games are getting underway. Canada has 126 athletes competing at this year's Games. Kwabena Aduro caught up with some of them ahead of the big event.
Rivard is going to come home for gold for Canada. Para swimmer Aurélie Rivard is no stranger to being on the podium. She is Canada's most decorated para swimmer, winning 5 Paralympic gold medals and 10 overall.
So if I think about like the little girl that I used to be, I can't believe that the person I'm talking about right now is me. But it does feel like it comes with so much pride. Her teammate Katarina Roxin will make history during these games as Canada's first female swimmer to compete at 5 Paralympic Games. Roxin says this year's team has a good mix of rookies and veterans.
Bringing it together and unifying us as one team. We have a very, very strong team. So I think we're all just looking forward to seeing how each one of us attack each and every single day.
There are 126 athletes competing for Canada in 18 sports at the Paris 2024 Paralympic Games. Wheelchair basketball player Patrick Anderson is competing in his 6th Paralympic Games. He says his team are underdogs in this tournament.
Being underdogs doesn't mean we're not here to win. It just means we got to knock off some big dogs on the way there. So we're going to come out of the gate playing downhill, playing with force.
Anderson and Roxin will be the flag bearers at the opening ceremony later today. A first-time honor for these two veteran athletes. Kwabena Aduro, CBC News, Montreal.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, go to cbcnews.ca. I'm Rebecca Zandbergen. This is CBC News.
Well, even a chillier start than we had yesterday in downtown Winnipeg. It's just 11 degrees from overnight. Thanks for joining us on Information Radio. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. Well, you heard it. The Paralympic Games do kick off today. The opening ceremony is right around 12:30 for a start here. That is local time if you're going to check it out on CBC. We're going to explore in the first hour of the show some of the history of the Paralympic Games, so stay tuned for a special report on that. Also, a drive for bikes locally in the Spence neighborhood. We're going to hear what a group is trying to do to turn the dreams of owning a bike for some kids into a reality, and also how it started with a heartbreaking reality that one kid couldn't get a bike because their family needed the money to buy groceries. Also, this hour on the program, we'll explore the latest data on the decline of remote work in Canada, and we'll hear more about the federal government's return to work plans. So you heard part of that probably earlier this week in the news that starting September 9th, the federal government will welcome more workers back into the office. Not everyone is happy about that. We're going to hear from someone this hour to analyze some of that data. And of course, in Winnipeg, I was just looking at the data for downtown earlier this morning, and it was talking about how we have had quarter over quarter, when you look at to 2024 compared to last year, the first quarter, there has been an increase in downtown foot traffic. But how much more of a difference would it make if federal workers were in our downtown? So we're going to explore that this hour on the show. Right now, though, let's go to Megan Ketchison, who is here with the day's news headlines. Good morning.
Well, good morning. A school board in Steinbach has been appointed a special advisor by the province. The Hanover School Division's Board of Trustees faced scrutiny in April after passing a hiring policy some called discriminatory. Now, Manitoba Education Minister Nello Altomar says retiring Winnipeg Superintendent Kelly Barkman will advise the board. And Manitoba Kiwi Nawi Okamakinak, or MKO, will elect a leader today. The organization that represents 26 Northern First Nations is holding its annual General Assembly at the RBC Convention Centre. Now, the assembly was moved from Opaskwayak Cree Nation to Winnipeg because of the threat of wildfires and the number of evacuees currently in the city. And I'll have more at 6:30.
All right, thanks, Megan.
Thank you.
And let's get into good morning to the team. Chloe, hello.
Good morning.
Good morning, Abby.
Good morning.
So who wants to go first?
Should we rock, paper, scissors, or?
Let's go.
We've never done that.
Paper,
Okay.
scissors. Oh, okay. Rock, paper, scissors. Oh, Abby wins. Abby can go first.
I go first.
Okay. Did you win? I didn't. I was supposed to call that for the radio listeners.
I called paper. Abby called scissors.
Nice.
Therefore, Abby goes first.
I go first. I saw the golden sunset last night. It was beautiful.
Oh, yeah. You know what? It's such a great time of year for that. One of my favorite pictures of all time was taken before the morning show one fall, right around this time of year. Well, September. And the sky was positively pink at that time, like the kind of magenta pink that you can't even imagine on a paint chip. It was just amazing. So,
and of course, last night, sky watchers were enjoying some northern lights in the city also. So that was like another plus.
Been a good year for that. All right. So I mentioned it had been 11. Where are we at now?
Yep. We are at 11 in the city. Down south, most regions across board single digits, except for Winnipeg at this time. We have mainly clear skies. We should be expecting some mainly sunny conditions today. Some fog patches, I noticed them on my way in this morning, but they will be dissipating as we get into the day. Then it's going to become breezy near the noon period, with temperatures warming up to about 26 degrees, though it's going to be feeling close to about 30 with the humidity factored in. And then we'll see some clouds roll in later tonight. And I know nobody wants to hear that, but some showers will be coming late in the evening, and there's a chance of some thunderstorms overnight. But other regions up north, we're seeing partly cloudy conditions. Thompson Churchill hovering around 9 degrees at this time, though you'll see sunny conditions today. And then down south, it's going to be partly cloudy, and we're seeing temperatures hovering between 7 in Brandon and then 8 in Morris. Also mainly sunny conditions in the forecast for today.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Chloe, it's your turn.
It's my turn because I lost the game of rock, paper, scissors.
Okay. It's all right. You'll win later.
I will.
There's joy in playing.
So. Yes, exactly. Very chilly bike ride for me this morning. I thought about maybe needing a jacket, which is the first time I've had that thought this summer. So, but yeah, commute. If you're having trouble on your commute, if something's getting in your way, slowing you down, if you're an active commuter who chose to wear a jacket, good choice. But let us know what's going on out there. 204-788-3093.
Well, if you are lucky and privileged enough, think back to when you got your first bike. Chloe was just talking about biking. It can be a mode of transportation to call your own, a freedom. And it's perfect for summer, right? That was one of Winnipeg West End, a dream rather, of one child in Winnipeg's West End, but it was something that didn't end up happening. Our next guest said that the money that was supposed to be used to buy the bike that I'm referring to had to be used for something more important, for groceries. Christy McCoskey is with the Spence Neighborhood Association. She shared the story behind this with host Faith Fundal yesterday, and they were also joined by Melville Harper, who's one of Christy's co-workers.
Christy, let's start with you. What was it like for you when you heard that conversation that his mom had to spend the money on groceries instead of being able to buy the bike?
It was heartbreaking, and because he was so excited to get the bike. He knew what color he wanted, and when he explained why he didn't get the bike, he was so understanding, and I could tell that there was like a level of patience and such great character inside of him that he understood like we needed the food.
What did you make of that that realization that a bike is something that I saved money for. I wanted it, but groceries, food is food. What did you make of that level of understanding for this young kid?
I thought of so many things. First of all, I thought that is just something that I couldn't relate to. I always had a bike, and when I grew out of that bike, I got another bike, and it was such a sense of freedom, and I didn't think of that when I was young. But when he said that, I thought, oh my goodness, yeah, you just want to go, right? And you want to play with your friends. And I also thought, well, how responsible are you? Like, look at this character. He just seemed to understand. He was very disappointed. But the third thing that I thought instantly, I just thought, oh, well, I'm going to get you a bike.
Mm-hmm. I know because of where you work and the program that you help run, you see a lot of kids out there. What do you notice when you see other kids with their bike or bikes as you sort of look across the street?
Well, we have 30 to 40 children in our program right now from ages 6 to 12. There's only a few that have bikes, and they're not great bikes. Like, these bikes don't have brakes, and they're going full speed towards Ellis, and I'm always chasing after them. But the other kids are begging them for a turn, or they're talking about one day I'll get a bike, and they're already 12.
And these are things that you've seen and you've heard because of the work that you do.
And I see them just, sort of drooling over the kid that has the bike, and they're all vying for a turn. And I happened to mention that story of the groceries to my pastor, and he just said, yeah, let's get them all bikes. And I thought, oh, well, there's an idea.
Mavel, you've been part of the program that Christy does. It's called Building Belonging. You were a kid then.
Yeah, I was a kid then.
Now you're 18.
Yeah, working for them.
What kind of difference do you think it might have made for the folks around you when you were younger as part of the program to have something like a bike that you could call your own?
I don't know. It's just
probably something that would have made a bit of a difference in terms of you feeling better about doing stuff and being a kid.
Yeah.
Christy, you have posted online. I know you've also spoken to the folks in your communities. How responsive have people been about donating or finding a bike?
So the call just kind of went out this morning, and I'm getting emails and texts, people saying, I've got a bike in my garage. Can you come pick it up? We actually just picked up two, so we're all dusty.
What do they look like?
They're
bikes.
They're mountain bikes. Yeah, one of them is really sweet. So
it seems like people. This is something that they care about as well.
Yeah, I just got a text right before coming in here of someone saying, I don't have a bike, but I'm going to give you money to go towards a bike.
Mavel, you were with Christy to pick up the bike.
Yeah,
what was that like?
Getting on the bike was like, it was all dusty and like heavy.
What did the folks have a conversation with you about why they wanted to donate their bike?
They didn't have conversation, but Christian talked to them about the bikes, donating things. Yeah.
I know Christy spoke to you about that conversation she heard. What did you think when you heard that conversation about what happened? When it came to the young kid needing to spend the money on groceries instead of buying a bike?
I don't know.
I think it's a common reality for a lot of the families. And even the bike that we picked up today, I said to Mavel, that would be great for the cousin that he lives with, because he lives with 4 of them. And so I just immediately thought, because they're all really wanting bikes too.
So you put a call out. you and Mavel have picked up one already. What are you looking for exactly? Are you looking for bikes that might be broken and need fixing, or are you looking for bikes that are that work well, that you're hoping people will want to donate?
Yeah, preferably bikes that are in good shape. We do have some volunteers that are going to be doing some minor repair, but I don't know anything about bikes. So hopefully they're just ready to go. And we'll be collecting them, like we're doing pickups. People can drop them off, and we'll be accepting them until the 28th of September.
What's your message to people who are listening and watching about looking in their garage or looking in their backyard to see if they have bikes that they'd like to get rid of?
If you haven't like broken down bikes, you could donate them so we can make the kids in the West End like happy about it, and just like any bike that works, that'd be good for the kids. Yeah.
Christy, what's your? It sounds like people are hearing your calls. What's your message to them?
What I know is that people want to help. They really do. So this is just another way for people to give to the city and do a great thing. These bikes keep kids out of some not so great activities. They're bored. And so the bike is a way for them to play. It's a way for them to gain freedom. It's a way for them to get out of their regular community and go explore their city. So I know people love to help, so this is a great way.
And I look forward to chatting with you as well when you and I say when you have the bikes because I think the community will respond. I should ask, how do people get a hold of you, or how would you like them to if they have a bike to get a hold of you?
They can contact me at christy@spenceneighborhood.org, and they can message me over Facebook. It's Christy McCoskey. They can call Spence Neighborhood Association or go to the website.
Lots of
as
ways.
Well. Mm-hmm. And we're looking to get about 40 to 50 bikes.
And you have, I think, 8 right now is what you said.
Mm-hmm.
We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you both for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was CBC host Faith Fundal speaking with Christine McCoskey and 18-year-old Mavel Harper, both with the Spence Neighborhood Association. So their actual bike giveaway is coming up next month, September 28th. So there's still time to donate if you have something to give. And it's on Langside, of course. That's where Spence Neighborhood is located in Winnipeg's West End. You can check out their website or Christy's personal pages, as she mentioned, to reach out to them if you have a donation.
Hearts will race. Champions will emerge.
The Canadian is a champion.
Medals will shine. The best of the best are set to compete for Paralympic glory. Experience the extraordinary with extended live event coverage and full event replays. The 2024 Paralympics begin August 28th, live from Paris. Watch free on CBC Gem.
All right. Well, you just heard it. Today's the day. If you had your calendar up and open this morning, then you know it is August 28th. And so it begins. The 2024 Paris Paralympic Games. We're going to talk to a local athlete in the next hour who is there. Now, between now and September 8th, that number once again is 4,400 athletes. It includes 126 Canadians who are going to compete across 22 different sports. So John Lepke is a disabled journalist who's working with CBC Sports throughout the games. And right now on the show, he has a report to set it all up.
Good morning.
So how did you come to report on the Paralympics for CBC?
Sure. So I could say I was very, very lucky, and that would be true. But as for experience, I competed in both wheelchair basketball and wheelchair rugby. I always say I got to go to a bunch of cool stuff, but never anything at the scale of the Paralympic Games. And then after competing in 2 Canada Games and some national championships in wheelchair rugby, at university, I was a student journalist, did an English degree. And although I went into some other sectors, journalism never really left me. And so now I am a full-time freelance journalist.
So the history, if we get into a journalistic question, the history of the Olympics is pretty well known. But share with us the story of the modern Paralympic movement.
Sure. So the modern Paralympic movement in a lot of ways can be traced back to the UK, but the first modern Paralympic Games, or the first Paralympic Games that we label as the Paralympic Games, are Rome in 1960. From there, it wasn't until Seoul in 1988 that the games were combined in the same space formally, as in the same city. And then about a decade or so after that, an agreement was signed that means that when a hosting committee is bidding for something like the Olympics, in this case Paris, they are also bidding for the Paralympic Games at the same time. Now, outside of that sort of administrative aspect, the largest part of the Paralympic Games, of course, is showcasing the highly competitive and elite athletes that are on display in a variety of sports. That's an aspect of the disabled life that isn't always showcased day to day on our sporting landscape. One of those athletes is 400-meter runner Amanda Rummery.
After losing my arm in 2015 and turning to sport as my outlet, track just has meant so much to me, and it saved me in so many ways. It truly makes me the happiest, healthiest version of myself, and I want to run on the biggest stage possible, which for us is the Paralympics, and I want to run a race that is reflective of all the hard work, all the sacrifices I've made over the last 7 years.
Amanda is part of a Canadian Paralympic team that has a wide variety of origin stories, experiences, and medal hopes. As you can expect, a lot of times in parasport coverage, we see the stories of the athletes as well, just as much as alongside the events that they're competing in. And there are multiple athletes in Winnipeg.
Can you tell us about some of the local athletes at the Games?
Yeah, so on the athlete side, there are a few coaches and support staff from Manitoba. But of the athletes, Bethany Johnson is one of those athletes. She'll be making the trip to Paris in wheelchair basketball. She's also excelled at another sport representing Manitoba in canoe kayak at the 2022 Canada Games. Team Canada will be looking to improve on the 5th place finish the team had at the 2023 World Championships. The other competitor for Manitoba is Leanne Taylor in paratriathlon. She, like a fair number of other Paralympic athletes, found their way into the sport shortly after becoming disabled, and she competed in her first triathlon 8 months after injury. Leanne, like so many of Canada's athletes, is a medal threat, having finished just off the podium in the last 2 World Championships for her event.
And people can get excited because she actually is going to be a guest on our program a little bit later in the show today. So we're going to have her on. What are some of the sports that you're watching and where you might expect to see records broken this time around?
Sure. So when we talk about parasport in Canada, largely because of the success of Team Canada over the years, we're often talking about sports like wheelchair basketball and wheelchair rugby. Wheelchair rugby, fun fact, created in Manitoba. And so a heritage sport. But when we look at records, we should really expect those to fall on the track and field and in the pool. That's a combination of the high level of athletic achievement happening there, but also the number of events and competitions that come out of those areas.
As the Games open today, what will people see for the start of the Paralympics?
Sure. So just like the Olympic Games, the Paralympic opening ceremonies will not be held as is traditional in a stadium. I've seen some footage leading up to the Games that shows some very excited athletes to experience something new. Really, it's an opportunity to showcase on the world stage pomp and circumstance, the excitement of the Games, and also sort of dispel some notions perhaps people have about the ability of disabled people and people with disabilities to compete. Part of that is showcasing athletes, as I said. And on that note, here's Saskatchewan's Ryan Rousseau on his hopes for the Games. You'll also hear some fencing sounds, as that is what he competes in.
I want to compete with these people that are, I would also call friends, on a very competitive open world stage, and hopefully beat them on the open world stage so I can have bragging rights for the rest of my life. When I first tried it, I was really, really excited by it. And I said, Mom, I got to try this, right? Like, this is something I got to do.
We heard Ryan sort of, pointing out the bragging rights aspect of this. There's a joke in parasport circles that the Olympics is just the warm-up for the Paralympic Games.
Love that.
Parasport humor really is undefeated. But as a result, we can expect to see our country's fair share of smiles, laughter, tears, all of the things we've come to expect from major international competition.
John, thank you for this morning.
Thanks so much for having me.
John Lepke is a former para-athlete who is working with CBC Sports throughout this year's Paralympic Games. After 7 o'clock, Leanne Taylor is in Paris. She's one of our athletes there representing Winnipeg, representing Canada, and we're going to talk to her live, so stay tuned for that. In addition, we have business news coming up. Yesterday, we were talking all about trade with China, and today we're talking about concerns around trade with the United States. So stay tuned. That conversation after your CBC Winnipeg News.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Megan Ketchison in Winnipeg at 6:30. Mainly clear and 11. Hot and muggy later today with mainly sunny skies and a high of 26. A judge will hear today from family members of Winnipeg serial killer's victims. It's part of the formal sentencing process for 37-year-old Jeremy Skibitsky. He was found guilty last month of 4 counts of first-degree murder. The convictions carry an automatic life sentence with no chance of parole for at least 25 years. Skibitsky admitted to killing Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Comtois, and a 4th unidentified woman given the name Mushkade Bishike Ikwe Iban. Sandra Delarond advocates for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. She says Skibitsky's crimes are one example of a serious problem.
We have an opportunity as a community to talk about what this case has meant to all of us in terms of our safety and our well-being. And we know that for all Manitobans, this case had a serious impact.
Delarond will address the court to highlight how the crimes have impacted the broader community. A school board in Steinbach has been appointed a special advisor by the province. The Hanover School Division's Board of Trustees faced scrutiny in April after passing a hiring policy some called discriminatory. Now, Manitoba Education Minister Nello Altamar says retiring Winnipeg Superintendent Kelly Barkman will advise the board. He says the hiring policy wasn't a factor in Barkman's appointment, but added a goal of his work will be to ensure student inclusivity.
We just want the board to continue to be really effective at creating safe, inclusive schools for all members of their community. And Kelly has extensive experience in doing that and can provide some insight.
Altamar says Barkman's work at Hanover will last as long as it needs to. People who rely on bus service in Manitoba's north are reeling at the news that Mahihinkan bus line is shutting down. The service replaced Greyhound bus lines when it shut down in the province in 2018. In a notice on Facebook, the company says despite our best efforts to sustain operations, economic circumstances have forced us to make this difficult decision. Many rely on the bus to come to Winnipeg for medical appointments. Andre Murphy is the mayor of the PAW.
We cannot not have a bus service in northern Manitoba. It's just not feasible. So, whether we need to have other supports come in or other financial systems in place to support this service, northern Manitoba and the PAW cannot not have a bus service.
Murphy says he's reached out to a number of levels of government for a solution to the bus transportation issue in the north. The company says the bus will cease operations September 6th. In international news across Europe, the United States, and now here in Canada, health officials this summer are reporting an ongoing rise in the cases of whooping cough. Idil Musa has more.
It's a staccato cough, so it's like cough, 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 cough.
Dr. Anna Banerjee says whooping cough is a highly contagious disease. The pediatrician says it's also preventable if people are vaccinated.
Children die from whooping cough, so it's not just such an innocent disease.
There's been a steady increase in cases of the disease, with major surges reported in Quebec and Ontario, and a province-wide outbreak declared in New Brunswick last week.
It starts as a relatively common cold.
Dr. Allison Chris with Toronto Public Health says waning immunity could be a cause of the recent spike.
We've seen a decline in our children getting vaccinated while we experienced our pandemic over the last 4.5 years.
Vaccines to protect against whooping cough begin at 2 months old. Experts say expectant parents and those in close contact with infants and young children should also make sure their immunization is up to date. Idil Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
The organization that represents 26 northern Manitoba First Nations will elect a leader today in Winnipeg. Manitoba Kuwait-Nawi-Okan-Mackinac, also known as MKO, is holding its General Assembly at the RBC Convention Centre. The annual gathering had to be relocated due to a number of wildfires in some parts of the north. 2 candidates are vying for the position of Grand Chief. The incumbent, Garrison Settee, hails from Pimicikamak Cree Nation and has led MKO for the past 2 terms. Challenger Chris Baker is the former chief and headman of Opipon Na Piwan Cree Nation. Voting happens at 1 p.m. today. And that's the CBC News from Winnipeg. You can always find more on our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
How'd the weather feel to you this morning, Megan, when you walked out the door?
It was a little nippy, a little brisk.
Yeah.
But it's supposed to warm up later today, so it'll make up for it.
Absolutely. Chloe was saying as she biked in this morning, she could feel it, like wanted an extra layer for the first time.
Yeah.
So yes, later it's going to be warmer. Abby's here with all of our details with CBC's regional forecast. Abby?
Yes, we will be warming up, but before then, we should see some partly cloudy conditions this morning, and in most of the regions, temperatures would actually warm up from 20 to 26 in most areas across the province. We'll see breezy conditions. Also, Winnipeg still at 11, clear skies we're seeing out there. Some sunny conditions would make its appearance in a bit of let's see, 15-20 minutes from now it should be making its appearance. Saw some fog patches on my way in this morning. That should be clearing off as we get into the morning, and then we'll get to a high of 26, so it's going to feel warmer with the humidity factored in. Heading west to Brandon, 7 and partly cloudy at this time. Sunny conditions also you will get, then a transition to a mix of sun and clouds and a good chance of showers and thunderstorm later today. Some fog patches you saw this morning will also be easing off, and then you will get to a high of 23. Moving north to Thompson, where it's 9 degrees and mainly clear. We will see mainly sunny skies up there this morning, and then you'll warm up to a high of 22. Further north in Churchill, 9 degrees and partly cloudy at this time. A transition to a mix of sun and clouds later, high 20. Dauphin is sitting in 5 degrees and clear. This time, some sunny conditions on its way, and we will see a transition to a mix of sun and clouds later. There's a slim chance of showers in the forecast this afternoon. Your high is around 24. A risk of thunderstorms also in the forecast. Gimli sitting at 8 degrees, some clouds here and there. The Interlake region will see mainly sunny conditions also today, high 26. And then the clouds will roll back in later in the evening. Showers begin late in the evening, and then we'll get some risk of thunderstorms also coming with that. You'll get to a high of 26. Steinbach at 9 degrees and clear this morning. Sunny conditions in the forecast, high 26. Morris at 8 and clear for the Pembina Valley region today. Sunny conditions, high 26. Showers will begin this evening with a risk of thunderstorms in the forecast. Mainly sunny across board, and then just the dots for the rain that's going to come later in the evening.
All right. Thanks, Abby.
Thank you.
Now, to talk more about the commute this morning, Chloe Friesen is in studio. Hello.
Good morning. I can definitely see traffic picking up outside the windows here at Portage and Spence. No calls so far to the commuter line, but if there is something getting in your way, perhaps there's just a stretch of construction that just gets you every morning and you want to tell people about it. You can let us know by calling the commuter line, 204-788-3093.
Still ahead, as we mentioned, Chloe, we have Leanne Taylor on the program.
So excited.
One of our athletes from Winnipeg that's representing Canada at the Paralympic Games that kick off today. I just posted our Facebook question, so if you follow Marcy Marcusa on Facebook during the show, acts as a show page. You can also, by the way, if you're watching this morning on YouTube, you can comment right in the YouTube thread as well. We are wondering if you're going to be watching the game, but the specific question is, what Paralympic sport is your favorite to watch and why? And I know, Chloe, you right away had an answer.
I had an answer, and it's been my answer since I was probably in high school. I grew up playing volleyball, and I went to volleyball nationals when I was young. And I think we were in Edmonton, and part of the event was the national women Canadian sitting volleyball team was there, and they played a game, and we got to go watch, and it was incredible. The arm strength and like the movement, and I've just been fascinated with the sport ever since. It's so cool seeing those adaptations for sports that
that you play, and then getting to watch it adapted.
Seeing this version is just fascinating. I'm also excited to watch goal ball.
Yes, yep.
Where it's the ball that jingles,
yep.
and there's 2 goals. It's just wow.
I like that you brought up volleyball, because I think if you've played volleyball, so you were talking about having an understanding athletically of the differences that would be needed in your body to achieve sitting volleyball.
Yeah, and probably
to compete in sitting volleyball.
Like even more control with where you're placing the ball.
Oh,
It's
for sure.
fascinating. It's so cool.
So if you want to weigh in, I don't know if sitting volleyball is your sport, your fave to watch like Chloe, or if it's something else. Take your pick. There are 22 different sports being represented at the Paralympic Games. Which one do you like watching the most and why? You can let us know. We've posted that on Facebook. So that is on my Marcy Marcusa page. You can also call us if you would rather do that. It's 788-3205. That's our listener line. Well, it is time right now to hook up with Phil Demont, who is here with our business news this morning. Hi, Phil.
Hi, Marcy.
So we were talking yesterday about trade with Canada's tariffs on Chinese goods. Today, a different trade issues front and center. This one's around the United States. So what's the story?
Yeah, this is how Canada approaches the American election from a trade perspective strictly. Does Ottawa want Donald Trump or Kamala Harris in the White House? The U.S. ambassador to Canada, Kristen Hillman, says it doesn't really matter. She was in Halifax this week talking at the Liberal government's cabinet retreat. Her argument is that any protectionist measures, such as Trump's proposal for a 10% tariff on everything going to the U.S., would be difficult to apply across the board to Canada because of the two economies being so integrated. Generally, however, you get the sense that Ottawa appears more worried about a new Trump administration, again, from a trade point of view, after the November election. That's because the former president's anti-free trade stance, the first time around, it forced the renegotiation, and it was contentious, of the existing Canada-U.S. trade deal. Unspoken, however, is the fact that the Biden administration has been fairly protectionist in its own trade program. You think of Canada's furious lobbying to get our goods exempted from Washington's Made in the U.S. policy. But Canada has been able to sell more to the U.S. under Biden than Trump. You go to 2016 to 2019, our exports south, they grew on average about 5% a year. Between 2021 and 2023, to get around COVID, the average was about 8.5%. What might need to change is our approach. Past few years, we've used the Team Canada strategy. That's basically where our officials and business leaders go to Washington and the state capitals and basically say, hey, we're really good people. Keep trading with us. That kind of, good boys, hail, met kind of thing. This time around, though, we might need more specific trade-offs. That's according to Canada's former ambassador to the U.S., David McNaughton. He says Ottawa should look for other areas to help U.S. policy, say like peacekeepers in Haiti, where it's ungovernable right now. Then you use that carrot to get concessions in the trade area. This approach might work a little better with Trump than past ones because he kind of sees himself as the master of the deal, and if nothing else, at least understands trades.
Let's go to another story. How is a central banker in Africa driving up world oil prices?
Yeah, it's the strange world of Libyan politics right now, but it's really pushing up crude prices. This week, oil up about 8%, has come back a bit. Now, some of that is those rocket attacks over in Israel, but those don't have a direct effect on oil output. There's just that tension. Oil analysts are pointing to Libya, specifically the inability of the government to replace the head of Libya's central bank. In 2011, Libyan strongman Muammar Gaddafi was overthrown, but since then, the country's been divided by two rival governments, and that's led to problems maintaining Libya's oil output. Latest crisis, the group controlling the eastern part of the country wants to more or less shut down crude production in that region, but that's where most of Libya's oil comes from. The other part, government backed by the UN, wants to dump the head of the existing central bank head, but the eastern group, the guys with all the oil, they want him, Sadiq Kabar, to remain in power. All this matters because Libya right now has an outsized influence on global markets. It's only 4% of the world production, but the market's tight right now for oil, so any shutdown in Libyan production could drive up and has been driving up oil prices. Fighting in the Gaza and Lebanon with Israel has created uncertainty, but the Libyan crisis appears to be more immediate.
And before we look at markets this morning, you have a bit of a chaser, if I may. Thank you. It's all about something called a honey deuce.
Yeah. When I first heard the term, I thought it was a poker hand. Turns out it's a drink. Grey Goose vodka, raspberry liqueur, splash of lemonade, and 3 melon balls shaped like tennis balls. Why tennis balls? Because it's the drink of the U.S. Open tennis tournament, and that started up this week. So for $23 U.S., $31 Canadian, you can sip one of these lovelies while watching players grunt really loudly as they hammer ground strokes past each other. 2012, the Honey Deuce was relatively cheap at $14. It's actually now way above inflation, if you kind of do that number, because I did. But Last year, tournament goers slurped down 650,000 of these drinks. That's 2 drinks for every 3 attendees at the tournament. All told, tennis watchers at last year's Open spent $10 million on honeydews. Total prize money for the Open, $7 million. So the tournament organizers made back all the money they paid out in prizes in 1 drink.
What a comparison. What are the markets telling us this morning?
Right now, it's generally positive in Europe. Germany and France are up. Down in China, with Hong Kong and the Shanghai markets, we're down. Oil off $1, $74.53 a barrel in the Canadian dollar. It's flat right now, trading at 74.29 cents U.S.
All right, Phil, thank you.
Thanks, Marcy.
That is Phil Demont with Business News. 11 degrees in Winnipeg, cooler than yesterday and mainly clear this morning in the city. Partly cloudy over in Brandon. You're just at 7 degrees. In Thompson, mainly clear and 9. Winnipeg will head to a high of 26, though a little windy this afternoon and lots of sunshine. Well, I'm just going to say it plainly. Thank goodness we're doing this next item because I have no idea how to answer any of these questions. I'm one of those people that just says, sure, I'll accept your cookies. We all are there daily, multiple times a day. You're on the net, you land on a website, the sign comes up. Do you accept all of the cookies? Do you want to customize your cookies? Do you want to opt out of your cookies? What do we do with the cookies, people? CBC's Manjula Selvarajah has some answers.
Soon, the Girl Guides of Canada will again sell chocolatey mint cookies to fund their programs. It's a 97-year-old tradition at the charity that started with a guide leader in Regina. But Regina-based Brennan Schmidt has another cookie on his mind.
Well, unfortunately, we're not talking about chocolate chip or raisins.
The internet cookie.
What a cookie is that it's a small text file that websites store on your device to manage different functions. So you don't see it unless if you go looking for it, but it exists in the background to do things like keeping you logged in or track your browsing behavior.
Schmidt is a cybersecurity expert and author. The internet cookie was invented 3 decades ago to make surfing easier, to help websites remember visitors so they wouldn't have to keep plugging in their preferences each time they came back. But through the decades, they've become a crucial part of internet advertising, tracking people across the web and gathering information to provide them with more relevant ads. Thanks to new data privacy laws by the European Union, over the last few years, cookie-related questions have started appearing on web pages. You've probably seen quite a few of these on pop-ups and banners. When you open up a web page, they appear asking you for your cookie preferences.
So first of all, when the European countries decided to put this rule in place that imposes this type of change, they didn't perhaps think it through because most humans are not going to understand the technological aspect of it.
Eric Parent is a Montreal-based cybersecurity expert. He's the CEO of EVA Technologies, a consulting firm that coaches executives on cybersecurity issues.
And you're either forced to say no or say yes. And if you say no, maybe it'll break something, maybe the website won't work. And the easy way, obviously, is to say yes. So most people just click accept. They just move on because they don't understand what it means.
Now, cookies can be beneficial, too, by remembering what language you prefer or the type of products you liked the last time you were on the site. But Parent worries about third-party cookies, ones from a web page you're on, but owned by external parties.
Marketing cookies are usually done by a third party who track your preferences, and then they can correlate that because they can aggregate all this data from different websites that you may have visited, and they can get to a better conclusion as opposed to the single website that you visited trying to do that you like certain things, that you're visiting certain types of websites, that you're perhaps shopping for a new car or what have you. That really can't be a good thing if you're worried about privacy and about your preferences being exposed to large marketing organizations.
What then should we do when we see these pop-ups? Parent says the best practice would be to reject all cookies, but he realizes that would make some websites impossible to navigate. He suggests setting your browser to reject certain types of cookies automatically. How can you do this? Search the internet for specific instructions on how to disable cookies on your particular brand of browser. Brennan Schmidt recommends we pay attention every time we land on a website and be judicious about what we accept.
If it's a really quick website, I'll reject all. But if it's something where, let's say, I use the website more often, or it's a website that I know to be a trusted source of information, I will go ahead and, to improve the functionality, go ahead and accept those cookies. But if I want to be extra cautious, I'll make sure that I use a private browser window to make it so that it's a temporary session.
Look up how you can surf the web on your favorite browser in the anonymous or incognito mode. Eric Parent also recommends practicing cookie hygiene.
Cleaning your browser cache, browser history, and things of that nature is always a good idea. Even from a cybersecurity, from an attack point of view, if an attacker gets into your browser and then they have access to all these cookies, they have access to every website that you've ever been to, that's not a good thing.
You don't open your front door to just about anyone. Treat the access to your digital footprint with the same amount of caution. For CBC Radio, I'm Manjula Selvarajah.
Got to stop saying yes to all those cookies, apparently. It is 10 to 7 right now on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. Thanks for joining us this morning. We're live in downtown Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at the show. Mainly clear, 11 degrees and calm in the city right now. Well, speaking of downtown, recent stats from the Downtown Winnipeg Biz show a 23.5% increase in downtown visitors for the second quarter of 2024. That's compared to last year. And that number might grow next month as well, because starting September 9th, a new policy kicks in. It requires federal workers to be in the office at least 3 days a week, which could impact foot traffic in the city's downtown. That's a part of a growing number of Canadians, or those workers will be part of a growing number, who say that Statistics Canada reports are moving away from remote work. Claire Kumar is here to break it all down for us and talk about the impact. Good morning.
Good morning, Marcy.
So September's just around the corner. How are people reacting to the feds encouraging, or maybe in some cases trying to convince people to return to in-person work?
Well, there's definitely convincing at play, and I think it might even be in the headlines that we're talking about here, because we're being told that work from home is declining. It's not. What's declining is the percentage of people who are mostly working from home. The actual total number of work from home days has been flat since December 2023. But I think it's probably an effort, this is my guess, it's an effort to make people who are being ordered to go back to work feel better, because that might be in the air that more people are shifting that way. It's in fact not true.
So what's the reaction to this then?
Well, the union is fiercely contesting this and speaking on behalf of the employees to say, you know what, there's an issue here with quality of life. And I would suggest, I haven't seen this word being used, but it should be being used. It's an accessibility issue. And this may parallel my own story very much. I tried to negotiate workplace flexibility back in 2007 and was unsuccessful doing so negotiated my way out of the organization. But I had sensory sensitivity, and I didn't have language for neurodiversity. I didn't have language for autism, which is a fairly new diagnosis for myself. And so what you find a lot of times is that people have now been able to really design work and life and integrate it well. And if we're not considering people's challenges, whether they're disabled, whether they have caregiving responsibilities, they may not have articulated that to the workplace, nor do they necessarily have to, but they found a way to make it fit. And now the government is saying, too bad for your autonomy. This is what we're going to require, and figure it out. And I don't think that's the best path forward.
So you have a clear opinion on this, and you're a clear advocate for, obviously, the rights to work from home. But yeah. I do wonder if they're going to be bringing workers back. You were talking about accommodation, and I'm wondering about commuting, because that's something else that came up in the news this week. How can employers support employees' well-being and make the return to office more attractive? Will something to help with commuting be enough?
I'm not sure. It doesn't necessarily solve the accessibility issue, but you can reduce the burden. And I think it comes back to number one opportunity is flexibility, and to say, gosh, does it need to be 9 to 5, or can we break away from this? And so we can depressure the commute, for example, by not having it have to be at rush hour. So that's one option. Perhaps there is also some financial compensation that could help defray the costs. I know that some people are struggling to potentially pay for the train that they take to get to the office, for example. The commuting has reached pre-pandemic levels again in the time that it takes. And at the same time, we've also seen a diminishment of service because ridership has decreased. And so, therefore, you may not see the service levels that you need, and it may actually take you more time. So I think there is a lot that can be done to help make it a little bit easier. The ask that we're making of employees, we need to acknowledge what that is, and it might be person by person to understand what they're facing and try and alleviate it.
Do you think it's, I'm just going to use the word fair, do you think it's fair that, because some people think it's unfair, some people say it's fair game, that we are looking at the return to work and getting more workers in the office, not just the federal workers, but all workers, but as part of the solutions to help our cities and local businesses in the downtown cores of different Canadian cities?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I don't think that hanging your hat on a productivity argument tied to presence is a really solid argument. I think that they need to be decoupled, and we need to look at ways for organizations where it makes sense to use that space effectively. I think we might see a shift away from local to someone's home businesses in suburbs or other communities. We might see a shift in dollars. I'm also recognizing that if you take a bite out of somebody's wallet now for a commute, maybe they have to make their lunch, whereas before they might have been able to go to a local restaurant, and now they're having to economize, and maybe those dollars won't flow as we're expecting. I think time may tell on that, but I'm not sure it's a slam dunk.
Thank you for the analysis, Claire. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
That's Claire Kumar, productivity coach and workplace commentator, talking about the return to work. Of course, the federal workers, September 9th is the date. As you've been hearing in the news, a new policy will require federal workers to be in the office at least 3 days a week. That could impact our city, as well as other cities across this country, in terms of increased foot traffic downtown. As Claire's saying, she doesn't think, in her view, that it's necessarily fair to couple those two issues. However, what do you think? Especially if you're a federal worker and you want to be bold and weigh in this morning and share with us, if you want to be, I shouldn't say bold, but if you're willing to be open, but how you're feeling about it. Otherwise, if you just want to weigh in on the thinking of federal workers returning to work, but maybe all workers, what are your thoughts? It's September 2024, post-summer. We're talking about, the return to all of our work days and the rhythms kicking back in for back to school next week. What are your thoughts in 2024 about working in the office or remotely and where we're at? So 788-3205 if you want to weigh in. I think there's lots to talk about there. It is 3 minutes now to 7, though. We better go to Megan Ketchison. We have a big day in the news locally and nationally, and she's here to tee it up from Winnipeg.
Yes, a judge will hear today from the family members of a Winnipeg serial killer's victims. It's part of the formal sentencing process for 37-year-old Jeremy Skibitsky. He was found guilty last month of 4 counts of first-degree murder. We'll hear from an advocate for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls who will make a presentation to the judge. And people who rely on bus service in Manitoba's north are reeling at the news that Mahikakigin bus lines is shutting down. In a notice on Facebook, the company says, despite our best efforts to sustain operations, economic circumstances have forced us to make the difficult decision. They will close on September 6th. And I'll have more at 6:30.
All right, thanks, Megan.
Thank you.
11 degrees in Winnipeg, mainly clear. 7 over in Brandon, partly cloudy. In Thompson, clear and 9. For Winnipeg today, mainly sunny. It's going to be a little windy, a little breezy at least. Southeast, 20 to 40 K near noon is what our winds are going to do. A high today of 26 degrees, so it'll get warm later. On the morning commute, things are working out well so far. So good, so early. 788-3093 if you do want to reach us. In the next hour of the show, with back to school coming up for some preschoolers, it'll be back to nature. We're going to hear about a new forest nursery school program that's hoping to encourage more risky play and decision-making skills in some of the littlest sets, so stay tuned for that. In addition, in the next hour of the show, we'll hear more about what Megan just mentioned, the community impact statement that a local MMIWG Plus advocacy group wrote. It will be read later in court, and we're going to hear more analysis on World Report in a moment as well of this critical day. And the Paralympic Games begin. If you want to watch the kickoff, the local time for the Paris opening ceremonies for the Paralympic Games is going to be early afternoon, right around 12:30 here, Winnipeg time. But we are going to take you to Paris via Zoom after 7 o'clock. We're going to hook up with one of the best para-triathletes in the world. Winnipeg's Leanne Taylor is going to join us to capture some of the excitement and to set up her goals at the Games. Stay tuned. It's all still ahead on Information Radio.
On The Current. I'm Susan Ormiston. The founder of the messaging app Telegram has been arrested in France as part of a wider investigation into criminal activity on the platform.
Long-running operations that actually sell drugs, that sell child pornography via this platform.
Who is Pavel Durov and what's behind his arrest? Coming up on The Current. The Current, this morning at 8:37, 9:07 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app.
This is World Report. Good morning, I'm Rebecca Zanbergen in Ottawa. Israeli security forces are carrying out a major military operation in the occupied West Bank. Palestinian health officials say at least 9 people have been killed in a string of raids and strikes. Sasha Petrusik is in northern Israel. Sasha, tell us the latest.
Well, Israel has launched one of the largest operations in many, many years in the northern West Bank, in particular, 2 of the most volatile centers there, Jenin and Tulkarm. They moved in shortly after midnight with drones and helicopters, also on the ground, not only with special forces, but bulldozers to block roads and to seal off a number of facilities, including the main hospital in Jenin. Now, that part of the operation seems to be winding down a little bit, but there are a number of refugee camps in that area as well, and there is still gunfire and some explosions that are being heard from those areas. In addition to that, there was another parallel operation in the city of Tubas, which is in the Jordan Valley. And all of this, according to the Israeli military, was aimed at going after militants, especially Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad militants, who they say were preparing for some sort of immediate threat to Israeli civilians, and they said that they had to launch this operation. These 2 groups have become much more active in the West Bank ever since the fighting in Gaza started. So things have been ramping up gradually to the point that we see today.
Okay, Sasha, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
That is the CBC's Sasha Petrusik in northern Israel. Donald Trump is facing a new indictment for alleged attempts to subvert his 2020 election loss. A special prosecutor has filed a new case against the former president. The latest indictment comes after a Supreme Court ruling granted the sitting president some legal immunity. Freelance reporter Steve Futterman explains.
The new indictment is designed to comply with the Supreme Court's historic ruling on presidential immunity. The 4 specific charges against Donald Trump are identical to the charges in the previous filing. Among them, conspiracy to obstruct the certification of the 2020 election. The difference comes inside the indictment. Gone are allegations that Trump conspired to pressure the Justice Department. The Supreme Court said that would be an official act and Trump would be immune. But other allegations are still there, including Trump's speech just before his supporters violently entered the Capitol.
We're going to walk down, and I'll be there with you. We're going to walk down to the Capitol.
The prosecution argues that was not an official act, but rather a campaign speech at a privately funded political rally. And the new indictment still references Trump's phone call to Georgia's Secretary of State.
I just want to find 11,780 votes because we won the state.
On social media, Trump accused Special Prosecutor Jack Smith of trying to impact the upcoming election. Vice presidential candidate J.D. Vance was also on the attack.
I think it's clearly an effort to try to do more election interference from Jack Smith.
Trump's attorneys are expected to challenge the new indictment, and conceivably, this could eventually end up back before the U.S. Supreme Court. Steve Futterman for CBC News, Los Angeles.
Here at home, a sentencing hearing for a convicted serial killer is set to take place in Winnipeg today. Jeremy Sabisky is expected to get 4 life sentences for the murders of 4 Indigenous women. And for their families, today will also provide the opportunity to confront their loved one's killer. Cameron McIntosh reports.
Society can compartmentalize an issue.
So for Indigenous women's advocate Sandra Delaron, the chance to get an impact statement along with family and friends of 4 murdered Indigenous women on the record in court is profound.
We have an opportunity as a community to talk about what this case has meant to all of us in terms of our safety.
Jeremy Skibitsky was convicted last month of 4 counts of first-degree murder for killing Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, and a 4th woman known as Buffalo Woman. Skibitsky dismembered their remains and threw them in the garbage.
This victim impact statement from the community recognizes that it's never just one family.
Skibitsky will receive 4 mandatory concurrent life sentences with no parole eligibility for 25 years, making this hearing more of a formality, says lawyer Scott Newman.
It's more to bring both that healing component and to the family and friends of the victim, and to attempt to send a message to the accused.
Meanwhile, a search is about to begin for the remains of 2 of the women believed to be buried in a Winnipeg area landfill. Their families long insisting justice includes finding those remains. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A verdict is expected out of Ottawa this morning in the sexual assault trial of former Vice Admiral Hayden Edmondson. He was the head of military personnel in 2021 when he was accused of sexually assaulting a woman on board a Navy ship back in 1991. During the 2-week trial in February, the complainant testified that she was 19 at the time and holding the Navy's lowest rank, while Edmondson was an officer. Testifying in his own defense, Edmondson denied having any sexual contact with the woman. Cases of whooping cough are seeing a rise around the world and across Canada. In Toronto alone, public health officials say the number of cases they're seeing today has more than doubled since before the pandemic. Idil Musa has that story.
It's what we call staccato cough. So it's like cough, 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 cough.
Dr. Anna Banerjee says whooping cough is a highly contagious disease. The pediatrician says it's also preventable if people are vaccinated against it.
Children die from whooping cough. So it's not just such an innocent disease.
There's been a steady increase in cases of the disease across the country this year compared to pre-pandemic averages, with major surges reported in Quebec and Ontario and a province-wide outbreak declared in New Brunswick last week.
It starts as a relatively common cold.
Dr. Alison Chris with Toronto Public Health says waning immunity could be a cause of the recent spike.
We've seen a decline in our children getting vaccinated while we experienced our pandemic over the last 4.5 years.
Another culprit, says Dr. Banerjee, could be fear.
There was some hesitancy against the COVID vaccine for some people, and that's rubbed off onto other vaccines like MMR and pertussis.
Vaccines to protect against whooping cough begin at 2 months old. Experts say expectant parents and those in close contact with infants and young children should also make sure their immunization is up to date. Idil Musa, CBC News, Toronto.
In a few hours, the Olympic cauldron in Paris will be lit again. The 2024 Paralympic Games are getting underway. Canada has 126 athletes competing at this year's Games. Kwabena Aduro's caught up with some of them ahead of the big event.
Rivard is going to come home for gold for Canada.
Para swimmer Aurélie Rivard is no stranger to being on the podium. She is Canada's most decorated para swimmer, winning 5 Paralympic gold medals and 10 overall.
So if I think about like the little girl that I used to be, I can't believe that the person I'm talking about right now is me. But it does feel like it comes with so much pride.
Her teammate Katarina Roxin will make history during these games as Canada's first female swimmer to compete at 5 Paralympic Games. Roxin says this year's team has a good mix of rookies and veterans.
Bringing it together and unifying us as one team. We have a very, very strong team. So I think we're all just looking forward to seeing how each one of us attack each and every single day.
There are 126 athletes competing for Canada in 18 sports at the Paris 2024 Paralympic Games. Wheelchair basketball player Patrick Anderson is competing in his 6th Paralympic Games. He says his team are underdogs in this tournament.
Being underdogs doesn't mean we're not here to win. It just means we got to knock off some big dogs on the way there. So we're going to come out of the gate playing downhill, playing with force.
Anderson and Roxon will be the flag bearers at the opening ceremony later today. A first-time honor for these two veteran athletes. Kubino Duro, CBC News, Montreal.
And finally, the Dalai Lama has returned to the headquarters of the Tibetan government in exile in northern India after undergoing a knee replacement surgery in New York. Hundreds of followers today blew horns and cheered the Tibetan spiritual leader, and several performed traditional dances. The 89-year-old Dalai Lama flew to Dharamshala after weeks of recovery in Syracuse following the surgery on June 28th. And that's the latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, go to cbcnews.ca. I'm Rebecca Zandbergen. This is CBC News. Okay. Thank you.
Radio. We're live in downtown Winnipeg on 89.3 FM. Where, as you've been hearing in the news, today is a significant day.
We have an opportunity as a community to talk about what this case has meant to all of us.
Sentencing will happen today for serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky. So we're having that sentencing hearing coming up later this morning. This hour, we're going to hear why a local advocacy group for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls wanted to write a community impact statement. So stay tuned. That's coming up for you right before 8 o'clock. In addition, this hour on the show, as you've been hearing, so much excitement for the Paralympic Games. And out of the corner of my eye, I just saw on Zoom that I'm super excited because Leanne Taylor's joining us live from Paris. She's getting ready to compete for Canada and represent Winnipeg and Oak Bluff in the Paralympic triathlon. So stay tuned. We're going to talk to her all about her hopes, and that's coming up in a moment. Right now, though, let's come back to our newsroom here in Winnipeg for a moment. It's 7:11 a.m. Megan Ketchison is in to talk about what's coming up in the news otherwise.
Yes, well, people who live in Manitoba's north say they were shocked to find out that Mahikakan Bus Lines is shutting down next week. The company posted online that it made the decision to close because of challenging economic circumstances. The bus company stepped in after Greyhound stopped operating in Manitoba in 2018. The mayor of the PAW says people there rely on the bus to come to places such as Winnipeg for medical appointments. And a school board in Steinbach has been appointed a special advisor by the province. The Hanover School Division Board of Trustees faced scrutiny in April after passing a hiring policy some called discriminatory. Now Manitoba Education Minister Nello Altamar says retiring Winnipeg Superintendent Kelly Barkman will advise the board. And I'll have more at 7:30.
All right, thank you very much, Megan.
Thank you.
Abby Adeyemi, what's the forecast going to be like?
Look at the sun make its appearance.
Ooh, it's bright and nice. We didn't have that yesterday.
No, we didn't. That's the forecast for most of the regions today. Winnipeg at 11, sunny already. As you can see, some fog patches still here and there, but that should be dissipating. We're reaching for a high of 26 today. With the humidity, it's going to be feeling close to 30. And then tonight, we'll see some clouds roll back in and then some showers into the evening period. Other regions from Thompson all the way down to Morris, we're seeing temperatures hover between 8 and 10 degrees and sunny conditions already being felt across board.
Nice.
Nice.
Okay. All right, let's get into the commute.
Good morning.
Hi, Chloe.
Hello. There's not much going on out there on the commute, but if something is getting in your way, please let us know. We'll share it with your fellow commuters. 204-788-3093.
So I want to share something listeners have written about. Last hour, you were saying your favorite Paralympic sport to watch is sitting volleyball.
Yes.
You fell in love with it after viewing.
I saw it in person at a tournament. It was awesome.
So I asked this morning online with the Paralympics beginning, what sport do you like watching the most and why? And right away, we're getting You Go Girl triathlon, of course. Oak Bluff is proud of Leanne Taylor, wrote in Zenith Colleen. So there's listeners already that are cheering for my next guest. In a moment.
I love it.
Me too. In a moment, we're going to talk to Leanne Taylor. She's in Paris. So Leanne Taylor is says that bringing home a medal from the 2024 Paris Paralympic Games would mean the world to her. She is a Winnipeg para-triathlete. Her event consists of a 750-meter swim in the Seine, a 20-kilometer cycle, and a 5-kilometer run. She is considered one of the world's best among para-triathletes, and she spent the last few years proving it. And I am just thrilled that she's made some time for us on this important day to join us via Zoom from Paris. Hi there.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
How does it feel there in Paris in advance of the ceremonies today and in the village? What's it feel like?
Absolutely amazing. We just got here last night and the environment is just so electric. I feel like nothing can really prepare you for how exciting it is to be in the village, around all the other athletes and just absorbing everything.
Some of the other athletes have been remarking also on how awesome it's been to be in a space that's accessible. Have you noticed that yourself in the village?
This is my first game, so I have little to compare it to. But with that being said, there hasn't been a single thing that I have noticed as an issue. And I think in terms of accessibility, that's pretty incredible.
You've had some serious success in your sport this year. So obviously, earlier in the year, you won your first career gold medal on the circuit. And what are your hopes then for the games?
I think I would love to come home with a medal. I think that's an important goal for me. As to which color, I don't think I'm ever going to rule out going for the gold. So we're definitely going to go for it and see where we land. I think it's possible. It'll be a challenge, but I like a challenge.
Just so people that haven't been following the schedule, how long do you have to wait for your event?
I race on September 2nd.
Okay, so you've got a couple of days here. What do you do as an athlete with your mind in the meantime? Because you want to sort of celebrate, immerse yourself, you said it's your first games, with the other athletes in what's happening, but also you have, there's work to be done here. So how are you preparing for that athletically?
Absolutely. I think you have to, or for myself anyways, I have to really switch gears from one thing to another. So this morning we had the opportunity to explore the village a little bit. And while we're doing that, it's very relaxed and that's the focus. And then once we finish up here, I'm going to go do a bike workout. And when we're doing that, it's not relaxed and that's very much the focus. So I think having to really switch gears between, from one thing to the next and just focus on what you're doing and either fully enjoying it or fully executing it, depending on what you have going on.
I have to ask this question, and because Tyler Maslachuk, as you know, when he did the triathlon rather in the Olympic Games, there's this meme all over the place after the race where he got sick, right? We all saw it. So I'm wondering how you're feeling about swimming in the Seine and how you feel about the actual venue in Paris.
I think that Tyler got sick more from exertion than from the Seine. And I think that's such a glorious way to finish a race in a lot of ways, knowing that there was absolutely nothing you had left and you truly just left it all out there. And so I idolize Tyler in that way, in the way that he's able to just empty the tank and put in a max effort. And I think that's all anyone can ask for in a games performance. The course itself in Paris has challenges that are unique. We're swimming in the current, which is something that we have to learn. And so I've been swimming in Pinois to kind of practice for that, to expect the current. And then the course also has some sections that are cobble, which is unique for us as well. So something that we had to learn to adapt to. But we've taken a lot of time. I was at the test event last year, so I've raced this course once before. And we've had a lot of time to really specifically prepare for those elements. So then after that, it's just absolutely beautiful and iconic. And we can, now that we're prepared, enjoy the fact that we're going to be in the Seine and then biking through the streets of Paris. It's pretty beautiful.
In terms of how you got to this place in your athletic career, it wasn't always a goal for you to compete in this way. But when you talk about it now, at the place you are now, I don't ask every para-athlete about if they happen to be injured. I will ask you about your injury though, because you're upfront about saying you use this as also a platform whenever you can to talk about resilience. People might be surprised that your injury happened in 2018 in a bike accident. But 2018 was only 6 years ago. So what was your journey like to get here?
When I was injured, we set a very specific goal. And what we wanted to do is work to a place where we had such a beautiful life and had so much going for us and had so many things in our life that we loved and were proud of, that if I had the option to go back and undo my injury, I wouldn't. And at the time, that was such a big goal to set and felt a little silly at times and impossible at others. But at the same time, it was really important for me to try to get to a place where I was happy and proud and content with my life. And so pursuing sport was really just a part of that, of finding something that brought me joy and made me feel athletic and confident and capable. And then to have reached this point with it is just such a blessing. And I think a really nice sign for us that we really have accomplished what we set out to and built this life that, disability or not, is exciting and fit and full. And that was really something that was important to us when I was injured.
What's the strongest part of your race? Is it the swim? Is it the bike or the yeah?
That's such a good question, because last year I would have answered that so confidently that it was the run. But we've been working on our weaknesses. And so now, I don't know. It's hard to say. I maybe the swim. I'll let you know after September 2nd.
We'll be watching. Don't worry. Don't worry. Is anyone able to be on the trip with you in Paris to support you, or are most of your family and friends watching from back here?
Yeah, I'm really lucky in that my husband is my handler in the sport. So he helps me actually within the sport, but he's also staying in this bed behind me in the village. And so that's really lucky, because not a lot of non-athletes get the opportunity to be in the village and be with me throughout the whole journey, which is so incredible. And then I think we're at maybe 25 of our family that's in Paris, the friends and family. Yeah. So we're building the numbers. And so I think it's going to be a fairly loud Canadian crowd on September 2nd.
What message would you have for people who might be listening about overcoming challenges?
I think that when people see someone who does something like go to the Paralympics, they feel some kind of distance from them, like that challenge or that situation is different or unique. And I don't really think that it is. I think that everybody has incredible challenges in their life. And when you look at me, you can see some of mine, but it doesn't mean that they're more than anybody else's or really that different from anybody else's. So I think life is all just about putting one foot in front of the other, figuratively, and kind of taking steps towards what makes you happy, no matter what challenge it is that you're trying to overcome.
Are you going to get to watch any of the other events? What are you excited to go and watch?
Oh, everything. I've been so lucky in that I've met a lot of athletes in different sports from Canada and from different countries, especially because triathlon is composed of 3 sports. So we get the opportunity sometimes to train with other athletes. So I'm of course excited to watch the hand cycling and the wheelchair racing and swimming, but also wheelchair rugby is an incredible sport that I'm really excited to see. And then some of the things I've never seen before, like I've never seen goal ball, which is a visually impaired sport. And so I'm excited to check that out.
I shouldn't take for granted that you're attending the opening ceremonies, but are you planning to be there today?
We aren't going to be there in person because we're quite serious about our prep, which I think is a good choice. But we are going to be in the village. And so we are going to be wearing the kit and then spending some time with other Canadian athletes and watching the opening ceremonies from in the village. So we'll be seeing it and we'll be very much there in spirit.
When you complete your race and you're on the other side of it, medal or not, and you close your eyes, what are you going to think about? Are you going to be thinking internally like, all right, Leanne, we did this? Or are you going to be thinking about other people that inspired you over the years? What do you think your thoughts are going to fall to?
I think I'm just, even now, so incredibly grateful for all of the people that supported me on this journey. I think you just can't do it alone in sport in general, but even more so in para sport. I think there's so many people who gave so much of their time and energy and put so much heart into the outcome of this race. I know my swim coach is coming, and I think he's more nervous for the race than me because he just puts so much heart into it. And so I'm very excited to get to see those people who the race is for them, who I wouldn't be there without them. And I just feel like the opportunity to perform in front of them, I hope they see as a thank you, because that's how it feels to me.
What a beautiful way to put that. Well, we are rooting for you here. You know this.
Thank you.
You might have heard me mention that I asked what people will be watching, and Manitobans writing into the show live this morning. The first few of them they're posting the articles that have been written about you in some of the Oak Bluff newspapers, and just so I can read more about your journey. So you have tons of fans. Enjoy every moment of it, and thank you so much for giving us some time on this critical day from Paris.
Thank you.
All the best.
Thanks.
That's Leanne Taylor. She's a Winnipegger competing in the para triathlon at the 2024 Paris Paralympic Games. She's joined us live via Zoom from Paris. And the games kick off today. So the opening ceremonies are at 12:30 Winnipeg time.
It was the summer, and it felt like the end, but I didn't want to be just another ex-girlfriend. Thought, hey, maybe I can play too. Maybe one day I'll be just as good as you. Saved up and bought myself a bass. Dreaming of a way to get out of this place. Where my girls at? Where my girls at? Gonna sign me a rock and roll band, yeah. Where my girls at? Where my girls at? Gonna sign me a rock and roll band, yeah. Gonna sign me a rock and roll band, yeah. Gonna sign me a rock and roll band, yeah. I bought a van, then we got on the road. The Rocket, Lip Bistro, Barfly, then home. Selling t-shirts in a garbage bag. $20 more for the one that's on my back, yeah. Even if there's a buddy at the show, we gotta keep on singing, hey, let's go, no, bro. Where my girls at? Where my girls at? Gonna sign me a rock and roll band, yeah. Where my girls at? Where my girls at? Gonna sign me a rock and roll band, yeah. Where my girls at? Where my girls at?
Are you awake yet? That probably helped. This is No Bro. They're out of Montreal. This is Where My Girl's At. The song was a winner of the Songwriting Prize in this year's CBC Music Searchlight competition. The band is also on this year's Polaris Prize Music Shortlist. You can read more online. Polaris Prize officially will be awarded on September 17th. Paul McGowan, are you ready for sports? That's our pump-up tune
I
for
am
you.
so ready.
The Labor Day Classic is coming up. The Bombers might want to use that for a pump-up song.
Yeah, why not?
Speaking of the Bombers, they got a bit of good news yesterday.
That's right. Offensive lineman Stanley Bryant expected to start on Sunday. Now, he had to leave last game early, was seen down on both knees before being transferred to a gurney, hooked up to an IV, and then stretchered off of the field. Now, apparently, it was something related to the flu and the heat. He spent the night in hospital before being discharged the next day. Quarterback Zach Collaro says it's a huge sigh of relief to have him back.
Anytime something like that happens, it's a bit scary. Obviously, if it happens to anybody, but somebody who just has the weight of Stanley Bryant, within this organization, within the locker room, he's not just the greatest lineman to ever play this sport, but he's just the ultimate teammate and probably, the most popular guy in our locker room. Everybody loves Uncle Stan. So to hear after the game that he was doing well and, he'll be better, that's a welcome thing for us for sure.
That Uncle Stan moniker is more than just a nickname. Bryant will sometimes babysit for fellow lineman Chris Kolinkowski's daughters. On another injury front, the Bombers will be without Gabe Wallace for a while. He was seen on crutches yesterday. Head coach Mike O'Shea, though, doesn't think it's going to be a long-term injury.
Let's go to baseball this morning. The Blue Jays saw their 6-game win streak come to an end.
Yeah, they fell 6-3 to the Red Sox at Fenway. It was kind of a blah game for the Blue Jays, but there was a bright spot last night. Recent call-up Will Wagner. He's been very good for the Jays since coming up from AAA. Hit a couple of doubles last night. Also got his first ever Major League home run.
I actually didn't think it was getting out. I thought I just missed it. I thought I popped it up, but I saw the right fielder keep going back on it, and I was like, I might have a chance. And then I stopped at second. I thought he caught it. I thought I got robbed at first. And then I saw the umpire tell me it was a home run. So that was a cool moment. Probably like everyone's dream to hit a home run at Fenway. And for it to be my first home run, it was so special, so cool. I got it back. It's already framed. I think I'm just going to give it to my family. They held on to everything for me.
Will Wagner sending his junk to his family just like the rest of us. He might be the most unassuming major leaguer in the game right now. He really did have no idea that he hit that ball out, kind of pulled up at second base, saw the second base umpire signal home run, and then finally continued around the bases. The Jays and Red Sox with 2 games left to play in this series. They are playing 5 in total this week with a doubleheader on Monday. They play again tonight at 6.
And the Paralympic Games. You just talked to one of our athletes from here in Manitoba. We now know who Canada's flag bearers are.
Katarina Roxon and Patrick Anderson. Now, Roxon is making Canadian history by becoming the first Canadian swimmer to compete at 5 Paralympics, and she has done that all by the age of 31. She started competing at the Paralympics at 15 years old. Canada's other flag bearer is Patrick Anderson of the men's wheelchair basketball team. He's competing at his 6th Paralympics, already has 3 golds and a silver to his name. He was asked where this ranks among his career achievements.
Where does this rank? Everyone likes their rankings. Let's see. This is a different type of thing. This is just a humbling type of honor because this could be anybody. This is the kind of thing that I've seen people do before and just fall in line. I never actually thought that I would be the one out front. I like to sneak into a party late and go sit in the corner and chat with one person. But that's not an option this time around, apparently, I'm told.
Yeah, a good idea to not be late if you're one of the flag bearers, although the idea of him racing up a column of other countries holding the flag is kind of amusing. Coverage of the opening ceremony begins in the afternoon here in Canada. It's a 12:30 start on CBC and CBC Gem.
All right. Thanks a lot, Paul.
Thanks, Marcy.
Paul McGowan with Morning Sports on CBC. I want to mention we just talked to Leanne Taylor, of course, one of our athletes who's at the Paralympics in paratriathlon, but also from Winnipeg competing in wheelchair basketball. Bethany Johnson is there as well with a handful of officials and coaches in addition representing. So get ready to cheer. It is in Winnipeg, a pretty good commute. Also on the highways, the traffic line's been quiet. 788-3093 if you want to reach us. And stay with us, please, because after the news, we're going to hear more about a new forest nursery school program that started up in the city. Right now, though, Megan Ketcherson in the news.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Megan Ketcherson in Winnipeg at 7:30. Mainly sunny skies and 11. It'll be hot and muggy today. Mainly sunny, a high of 26 and a humidex of 30. More than 12 fire vehicles and police are on scene of a fire in a residential street near the Redwood Bridge. Crews were called to a fire at a residence on Noble Avenue between Beatrice and Henderson Highway around 6:40 this morning. There's no word if anyone is hurt. A sentencing hearing for a convicted serial killer will be held in Winnipeg today. There's little question that Jeremy Skibitsky will get 4 life sentences. But for the families and the friends of 4 murdered Indigenous women, today is also an opportunity to confront a killer. The CBC's Cameron McIntosh has more.
Society can compartmentalize an issue.
So for Indigenous women's advocate Sandra Delaron, the chance to get an impact statement along with family and friends of 4 murdered Indigenous women on the record in court is profound. Jeremy Skibitsky was convicted last month of 4 counts of first-degree murder for killing Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, and a 4th woman known as Buffalo Woman. Skibitsky dismembered their remains and threw them in the garbage.
This victim impact statement from the community recognizes that it's never just one family.
Skibitsky will receive 4 mandatory concurrent life sentences with no parole eligibility for 25 years. Meanwhile, a search is about to begin for the remains of 2 of the women believed to be buried in a Winnipeg area landfill. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
People who live in Manitoba's north say they were shocked to find out the Mohican Bus Lines is shutting down next week. The company posted online that it made the decision to close because of market volatility, inflationary pressures, and challenging economic circumstances. The bus company stepped in after Greyhound stopped operating in Manitoba in 2018. Andre Murphy is the mayor of the PAW. He says people there rely on the bus to come to places such as Winnipeg for medical appointments.
That's a vital service for us in the north, and I don't think people understand that we really can't not have a bus service in the north.
Murphy says he has reached out to other levels of government to find ways to ensure there is transportation for people in the north. A special advisor has been appointed at a Steinbach school division that recently faced criticism from parents. The Hanover School Division got into hot water in April after passing a hiring policy that some parents called discriminatory. Retired Winnipeg Superintendent Kelly Barkman has been appointed a special advisor to the board. Sandy Nemeth is the president of the Manitoba School Boards Association. She says the move doesn't surprise her.
With some of the conversations that are going on in the province related to gender rights, reconciliation, equity, it is not surprising that government would perhaps want to provide that school board some support.
Education Minister Nello Altmar says Barkman's work at Hanover will last as long as it needs to. In international news, Kamala Harris has agreed to a sit-down interview with CNN. It will air tomorrow night and will be the first time since becoming the Democratic presidential nominee that Harris will face questions about her campaign and her position on a range of issues. Katie Nicholson reports.
The DNC gave her a big surge in energy and money, but she needs to define herself and her positions and policy. And beyond that, she also needs to get into some of the nuts and bolts of how her policies are going to work. There isn't even a policy framework up on their website yet. So this interview will be key to further defining herself and her agenda and explaining changes in policy. For example, in 2019, she was in favor of a fracking ban. That's not going to play well in Pennsylvania, which most people agree she needs to win in 2024. And even though she did walk that position back when she became Biden's running mate, it still raises questions about what she truly believes. And the challenge here in this interview will be appealing to more centrist, independent, and Republican voters who are on the fence, and that small but crucial number of undecideds out there, without losing the support of the left flank of her party. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Washington.
And Manitoba Keewatin-Nauyakwamakanak, or MKO, will elect a leader today. The organization that represents 26 Northern First Nations is holding its annual General Assembly at the RBC Convention Centre. The assembly was moved from a Pasquak Cree Nation to Winnipeg because of the threat of wildfires and the number of evacuees currently in the city. Voting will happen at 1 p.m. today. And that's the CBC News from Winnipeg. You can always find more on our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
All right. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
It is bright in downtown Winnipeg, unlike yesterday morning. With our full forecast, it is time to hear from Abby Adiemi.
Sunny across the province. We're seeing the sun make its appearance already. Now it's 11 degrees in Winnipeg. We're heading to a high of 26. Brandon is at 7, heading to a high of 23. Thompson and Dauphin both hovering between 9 and 10 would see highs around 22. And for the rest of the south, we're seeing temperatures hover between 6 and 11 all the way down to Morris, and we'll see highs of 24s and 26.
All right, thank you, Abby.
Thank you.
Well, the commuter line has been very quiet, but if you want to call Chloe with any updates, 788-3093 if you see any problems out there, whether you're biking or walking or driving the car. Next on the show, while most kids will be walking into schools next week, there's a group of Winnipeg young ones that are going to be walking out the door and into the forest. The preschoolers are going to be the first cohort in a new school that opens September 4th. Forest Nursery School is located at the Riverview Ashland Childcare Centre. It's a fully licensed half-day program for 3 to 5-year-olds. Corrine Anderson is in studio to set it up for us. She's the Executive Director of Riverview Ashland Childcare Centre. Good morning.
Good morning.
I love this idea, but for people that might not sort of be able to wrap their heads around it, what's a Forest Nursery School?
Well, our program has always taken children out a lot, probably more than a typical childcare program does. And during the pandemic, we saw how important it was to have all the fresh air. And also we see that children are struggling a little bit emotionally. And we think that having those long uninterrupted periods of playtime outside are a really important way of getting back on track for that.
Are they outside the entire time?
It's a morning-only program, and so the plan is for them to get dropped off at our forest school site and get picked up from there as well. And we do have that indoor space for when the weather is really out of control and it begins to get hazardous, like there's lightning or a tornado warning.
Got it.
Which happens in Manitoba sometimes, but...
So from where the center is, the indoor space, to where the students will be dropped off, the kids,
Right.
Where's the forest?
It's just behind the Riverview Community Gardens, and what you can, for a lot of us Winnipeggers, we grew up playing on the monkey trails next to the river, and that's essentially what it is. People have lots of good memories of playing there, and so we've kept playing there with the children in our existing program over the years, and now we're just trying to level up a bit more with that.
There's a few other forest schools in Winnipeg. There's a program, at least at Fort White Alive.
Yes.
But you guys are doing this you're really doing this as a structured, brand new forest, nursery, like daycare. But you are calling it a pilot project. So why is it a pilot?
Because we've talked to our provincial coordinator in the province to say that, we want to try full days outside all the time and see how it goes. For the half-day program, but we would like to turn it into a full-day preschool program. For me, I'm also a childcare advocate, and I'm always thinking about how to create more spaces because as the director, I hear calls every day from parents who are desperate for care. And I think it's kind of a no-brainer. Children should be outside more. And what's a good way to create more programming without having to create more infrastructure? Well, we could have licensed forest school programs that would allow us to not have to build an expensive childcare center, but use as our emergency indoor space existing spaces in the city, like community centers. We might not be able to license those spaces as a full day indoor program, but they would be fully acceptable for an emergency shelter space that we're only using 5 to 10% of the time.
So it's an innovative idea because you'd be able to have more kids and more programs if you could access those spaces as backup. Of course, as you said, the challenges will be around weather, around, all those types of things. Yeah. What are the benefits? You started by saying that part of the, being outside, you were nodding to some of the challenges. You said children, mental health and things they're dealing with, that being in nature helps. How do you see the benefits of an outdoor school?
I know that you've recently talked to Dr. Brusoni from the Play Outside Lab at UBC, and she does research on risky play, and we're learning more and more that the things that we would characterize as risky, which would be jumping from high places, spinning around in circles, playing near water or fire, those sorts of things are an important part of child development. And the years where we tried to take all those risks away from children to keep them as safe as possible has actually been indirectly harming them.
Are they scared of more things then?
They can be, yeah. Yeah, I have had experiences like I worked in a program in the North End where they put a berm in the yard, and all of a sudden we had all these accidents. And so I went out to do an observation to see what was going on, and I realized that the children didn't know how to lean into the hill as they ran up, and they kept falling over.
Got it.
It's something that seems so simple, but it just at that part of the North End, there was no hills.
So sometimes they just lack of exposure to these things.
Exactly, yeah. Or I had a child who got burrs stuck all over his shirt and started panicking because he thought they were bugs.
Got it.
And so, just experiencing those things and also building a relationship, learning to see the bees and the wasps as an important part of nature and not as an enemy that keeps you from going outside.
And you're right to point to our Risky Play series. We've had a lot of comments coming in since we had that conversation with Ms. Brusoni earlier this week. So you're calling this, I mentioned, a pilot project. I know your long-term goals are hopefully to have sustainable funding, but you're interested in running the program for an entire day. Are there benefits to having the littlest set in these types of programs for longer lengths of time rather than half days?
Yeah, if you're observing children play, it can be they really need these long uninterrupted periods. If you're in an indoor program, we're always making them clean up to have snack time or circle time, these sorts of things. When you're outside, a lot of those things get taken away, and they can get into the really good deep play, like building a fort, or we had a group that dug up bits of pottery that they think was from an old farm site. And they spent days and days working on that same project. And if we were in a traditional program, we wouldn't have the opportunity to do those sorts of things.
What kind of barriers are you running into, official barriers to making a full day program happen for Forest School?
Well, one of the unique things about this program is that we want it to be a licensed program, whereas it's most typical in Canada right now to be unlicensed or privately run, but we want it to be accessible to all families and to qualify for the $10 a day childcare fees. And also because we think that licensing means that you have a quality program. So there's a list of things that you have to accomplish, and the list of things doesn't pair well with Forest School. And so some of the things like having to pay for a bunch of square footage for an indoor space, which is appropriate for an indoor program.
Okay.
It's just not, it doesn't make sense business-wise to pay for all that space when you're barely using it.
And a bathroom's an issue too, I understand.
Yeah, people have talked about on the CBC in the past about how hard it is to find a public washroom in Winnipeg. So a lot of programs will be constrained if they don't have a nearby forest. They won't be able to do this sort of programming. And I know there's programs that have been trying to do like a 2-week outdoor challenge. So every time you have to take a group inside, you're taking one adult out of the mix. It's not as good as supervision. And then it interrupts the children's play. And so they were wanting to use portable toilets. But to me, a portable toilet, we use potty chairs inside a childcare program all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what makes it unacceptable outside. But the city of Winnipeg has told us that we're not allowed to use those portable toilets.
So you're looking for more flexibility in terms of how the codes are written so that you can move forward and make this kind of a school more prevalent in Winnipeg.
Yes, we're very invested with keeping children safe.
Yeah.
That's our business. But we need the province and the city to think of things in a new way. I'm sure that there's ways that we can make these things safe. And we want that. But it requires thinking of things in a new way.
How many kids will start next week?
Well, right now we have about 6 families that are ready to line up and start in the spaces, but we do have spaces still available. You can find our wait list on our Instagram, which is at RA Forest School, or on our website at riverash.com. And we'll also be at the South Osborne Farmers Market this evening if anyone wants to pop by our table and ask us more questions about that.
That's excellent. Thank you very much for coming in this morning, Corinne. Enjoy the first day back.
Thanks so much for having us.
So we're learning about a brand new school. The first day will be next week. It is run out of Riverland Ashland Childcare Centre. The first day is Riverview Ashland Childcare Centre. The first day for the program for the Forest Nursery School is September 4th. We've been speaking to Corinne Anderson.
The CBC News app delivers the answers you want to know and need to know.
What an extraordinary scene.
The breaking stories that shape your world. Reporting from the scene onto your screens.
Dropping the 8 now. We're just approaching Gaza.
Your source for mobile news. Delivered when you want, where you want.
This situation has changed very quickly.
The CBC News app. Download for free.
Time right now is 7:46. It's mainly clear. 11 in Winnipeg. The high today, though, 26. Winds will be southeast 20 to 40. In Brandon, morning, Brandon. Partly cloudy, 7 for you right now. Thompson's mainly clear and 9. Brandon today, chance of late showers, risk of a thunderstorm late this afternoon, high 23. Thompson, mainly sunny and a nice high of 22. Well, coming up on the program after 8 o'clock, we're still going to be talking about school through the lens, though, of what is happening with the cell phone ban. We're going to hear how the Winnipeg School Division is preparing for a school year without cell phones after the province announced that ban earlier this month. How will schools enforce the new rules? We'll have that conversation coming up after 8 o'clock. But right now to today's top news, and news that is making not just here in Winnipeg top news, but across the country, it's making national news. Later today, more than 10 victim impact statements are going to be read in court at serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky's sentencing. Now, included in those statements is one from the community. Last month, Jeremy Skibitsky was found guilty on 4 counts of first-degree murder. In his decision, Chief Justice Glenn Joyal spoke of the undeniable impact of the deaths of Rebecca Contois, Mercedes Myron, Morgan Harris, and an unidentified woman given the name Mashkode Bishike Ikwe Iban, or Buffalo Woman. And he talked about the undeniable impact of the deaths of those women on our community and on the community, over the Indigenous community as well specifically. Now, Sandra Delaronde is with the Gigonaway Mononeg, formerly known as Manitoba MMIWG 2S Plus Implementation Committee. Now, they are the group that put this statement together. She met with the CBC's Josh Crabb, and she shared why this was so important to write.
We have an opportunity as a community to talk about what this case has meant to all of us in terms of our safety and our well-being. And we know that for all Manitobans, this case had a serious impact because of the political posturing, the making it an election issue by the former government, and how they really disrespected the lives and the experience of Indigenous women and girls. You know, rather than saying search the landfill, they say it's a dig. You know, those kinds of things have had altogether have had an impact on all of us as a community. And we felt it was important for the courts to know that. So we had decided that we would meet with different communities where we've heard from individuals about this case and about the cases that are ongoing in their communities. And because this case is not separate and apart from all of the other ongoing tragedies. So we met with people in Winnipeg, Brandon, Thompson, and the Pas. And in all of those gatherings, we also met with people that were the most vulnerable in their communities and people that, had experienced a high level of violence. It was a broad range of individuals, and including the mayor from the town of the Pas and the mayor from the city of Brandon. And they sat through with community and, hearing about the impacts of this trial and also talked about things that happened within their community. There are themes that have come from all of those community visits and community meetings that we're presenting as a summary to the courts. So it isn't just one community that experiences, the lack of relationship between the police and the community. It's all the communities. So those kinds of things we can summarize, and so how that, for example, if it's policing, what was the role of policing in this particular trial? Because we recognize there are broader issues, but how do those issues apply to this specific trial? We know that all of those issues from this trial are also present in, the other situations that have occurred and continue to occur.
Why is it important to give a community victim impact statement in this case?
I think that far too often, society can compartmentalize an issue and say, oh, that just affected that person in that family, and a decision has been made by the court, so it's over. This victim impact statement from the community recognizes that it's never just one family and one situation or one trial, because it all builds on the situation and the marginalization and the fear of people. So that I think it's important for the courts to note, and it's important for policymakers to note as well, that we're not talking about just one trial, we're talking about this whole situation, which has created an emergency in our country.
How were you able to sort of condense everything that you heard and put it into a community victim impact statement?
What we did was we brought along Roxanne Ballin, who's a graphic artist, to record what she was hearing as we were writing, because, words are important, but I think visuals help to anchor what we heard. And so when we go to court, we'll present both the visuals and the text.
In this case, Mr. Skibitsky was found guilty on 4 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, and Mushkade Bishake Ekwe-Ibon. And we understand is going to receive a life sentence with no chance of parole for 25 years. So the judge did say, despite that, it was important to hear from the community. What do you hope comes of this?
There are issues that arise. A couple things is there are going to be a review of how sentencing processes take place. Is there going to be another discussion on concurrent sentencing? And also, the discussion of racism or hate, which creates greater vulnerability, has created greater vulnerability for Indigenous women, girls, Indigenous people. So we're hoping that is part of the ongoing conversation after after this trial, that we still have work to do, very important work, and work that is really time sensitive. Oftentimes when we talk about situations, we often talk about them in third person. But this impact statement is real voices, real concerns, real hurt, real pain, and real hope and resilience. And I hope, and my hope is that when the public has an opportunity to hear the voices of community, that they will begin to understand why it's necessary to create change in our policies and our practices, because the impact of this case, and including the political process for searching the landfill, has had a real devastating effect on people. We need to find a way that we can address these real serious issues of racism in our community. And I'm hoping that when the public in general begins to understand these stories, that how we view each other, how we live in the world, how we live in our schools and in our community begins to change in a way that we are more accepting and have greater care for each other.
That is Sandra Delarond in conversation with CBC's Josh Crabb last night. She is with Gigonaway Mononig, formerly known as Manitoba MMIWG 2S Plus Implementation Committee. And Josh was in conversation with her because today will be one of those days in our community that is remembered. That is because later this morning, we will hear more than 10 victim impact statements read in court at serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky's sentencing. And then we will also hear, included in those statements, a statement from community about the impact of the deaths of these women. So CBC will have full coverage, of course, as you can imagine. And please tune in to us anywhere that you like to tune in. So 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app, on YouTube, on our website, full live coverage as well at cbc.ca/Manitoba with the developments through the day. And if you want to read the story this morning, cbc.ca/Manitoba is where you can go. It is 3 minutes now to 8 o'clock. Let's find out what else is happening in the news. Megan Ketchison joins us now.
Well, there are plumes of smoke hanging over the Glen Elm neighborhood this morning. More than 12 fire and police vehicles are on Noble Avenue between Beatrice and Henderson Highway. The call came in for a fire at a residence around 20 to 7. There's no word if there are any injuries. And a school board in Steinbach has been appointed a special advisor by the province. The Hanover School Division's Board of Trustees faced scrutiny in April after passing a hiring policy some called discriminatory. And we'll have more coming up at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
It is in Winnipeg, mainly clear. It's 11 degrees right now. We've been there all morning. Winds are calm. Now, winds will be a little bit, not gusty, but breezy maybe. Southeast 20 to 40 around noontime. A high of 26, so it's going to be warm today and mainly sunny. We did understand that there could be early morning fog. We haven't had reports of any of that, so call us if you do have a problem on the commuter line, wherever you are in Manitoba. And that is 788-3093. On the program after 8 o'clock, smartphone use in many Canadian classrooms, including here in Manitoba, will be restricted when the new school year begins next week. But how are schools actually planning to enforce the new rules? We're going to talk to the superintendent of the Winnipeg School Division about that. Also about how they might be preparing to deal with something that you may not have thought about, because we think about cell phones and learning and accessing information, or maybe the other side of it, being on with your friends, socially interacting. But what if you have great anxiety in not having that phone with you? We were having that conversation yesterday with a child psychologist. So we're going to ask how teachers and administrators are preparing to deal with that, something that might happen with some students. Stay tuned. That's all after 8. Right now, the World Report is up next.
I was 17 years old when I saw my people on the roads bumping Punjabi music.
I'm Ali Hassan, sitting in for Tom Power. Rapper and singer Karan Aujla made history as the first Punjabi artist to win a Juno Award. But he was a global superstar well before that, topping the charts with Punjabi raps over classic hip-hop and trap beats.
Q, this morning at 10, 10:30 in Newfoundland, and on the CBC Listen app, or wherever you get your podcasts. The CBC News is next. Coming up in half an hour, it's The Current.
I'm Susan Ormiston. The founder of the messaging app Telegram has been arrested in France as part of a wider investigation into criminal activity on the platform. Who is Pavel Durov and what's behind his arrest? Coming up on The Current.
This is World Report. Good morning. I'm Rebecca Zandbergen in Ottawa. We begin in Winnipeg and a sentencing hearing for a convicted serial killer set for later today. Jeremy Skibitsky is expected to get 4 life sentences for the murders of 4 Indigenous women. And for their families today, will also provide the opportunity to confront their loved one's killer. Cameron McIntosh reports.
Society can compartmentalize an issue.
So for Indigenous women's advocate Sandra Delaron, the chance to get an impact statement along with family and friends of 4 murdered Indigenous women on the record in court is profound.
We have an opportunity as a community to talk about what this case has meant to all of us in terms of our safety.
Jeremy Skibitsky was convicted last month of 4 counts of first-degree murder for killing Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, and a 4th woman known as Buffalo Woman. Skibitsky dismembered their remains and threw them in the garbage.
This victim impact statement from the community recognizes that it's never just one family.
Skibitsky will receive 4 mandatory concurrent life sentences with no parole eligibility for 25 years, making this hearing more of a formality, says lawyer Scott Newman.
It's more to bring both that healing component and to the family and friends of the victim, and to attempt to send a message to the accused.
Meanwhile, a search is about to begin for the remains of 2 of the women believed to be buried in a Winnipeg area landfill. Their families long insisting justice includes finding those remains. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Israel's security forces are carrying out a major military operation in the occupied West Bank. It is believed to be the biggest in decades. At least 4 Palestinian cities are being targeted at the same time. Palestinian officials say at least 9 people have been killed. Anna Cunningham is following the story from London.
The Palestinian West Bank cities of Jenin, Tulkarem, Nablus and Tubas appear to be the focus of this Israeli security operation. Little detail has been shared by Israel's forces, but images have been seen this morning of Israeli military bulldozers in the northern city of Tulkarem. It's reported that at dawn an Israeli airstrike targeted a vehicle in a nearby village, and Israeli troops are said to have blocked off 2 hospitals in Tulkarem. Local Palestinian media says main roads into Jenin have also been closed off, with reports of armed clashes in the city's refugee camp. In Tubas, Palestinian paramedic says the army raided the refugee camp. Israeli military raids have also been reported on 2 refugee camps in Nablus. Israel's Foreign Minister Israel Katz has said the Israeli military has been operating with full force. In a post on social media, he said it was to dismantle Iranian Islamic terror infrastructures established there. Both local Palestinian and Israeli journalists are likening the scale of this to the Second Intifada, a major Palestinian uprising from 2000 to 2005. It's believed this is the first time since then that several Palestinian cities have been targeted simultaneously. Anna Cunningham, CBC News, London.
Kamala Harris and her running mate Tim Walz are on the campaign trail in Georgia today, but people living anywhere will be able to hear the pair speak tomorrow. Their first interview as the Democratic ticket is set to air, and the CBC's Katie Nicholson will be watching it. She is in Washington for us. Harris has been facing a lot of pressure to get on the record. Where is this coming from?
Well, yeah, notably from Republicans. This has been one of their stronger attack lines on Harris, that she hasn't done an in-depth interview or really sat down with reporters since becoming the nominee. Donald Trump seizing upon this point, noting multiple times he's always willing to talk to reporters. And political analysts have also been very clear Harris can't win this race on raw enthusiasm. The DNC gave her a big surge in energy and money, but she needs to define herself and her positions and policy. And beyond that, she also needs to get into some of the nuts and bolts of how her policies are going to work. And there isn't even a policy framework up on their website yet. So this interview will be key to further defining herself and her agenda and explaining changes in policy. For example, in 2019, she was in favor of a fracking ban. That's not going to play well in Pennsylvania, which most people agree she needs to win in 2024. And even though she did walk that position back when she became Biden's running mate, it still raises questions about what she truly believes. So Harris has been tacking more to the center since becoming the nominee. And the challenge here in this interview will be appealing to more centrist, independent, and Republican voters who are on the fence, and that small but crucial number of undecideds out there, without losing the support of the left flank of her party.
Okay, Katie, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
The CBC's Katie Nicholson in Washington. A verdict is expected today in the sexual assault case of a former high-ranking member of the Canadian military. Retired Vice Admiral Hayden Edmondson stood trial in February. He is accused of rape on board a Canadian naval ship more than 30 years ago. It is a landmark case. It's the first of its kind being tried outside the military justice system. Kayla Hounsell has the latest.
I hope the significance is to provide a better sense of confidence and trust by the victim.
Retired Colonel Michel Drapeau specializes in military law. He's been following the case of retired Vice Admiral Hayden Edmondson closely and says regardless of the verdict, this is an important moment as one of the first cases of military sexual assault to be transferred to the civilian justice system.
It puts the victims and the accused of sexual assault trial on an equal footing with all other Canadians having to face the same challenge. I see that as a major step forward.
Edmondson was charged in 2021 with 1 count of sexual assault and 1 count of committing indecent acts, one of several high-ranking military members accused of sexual misconduct that year. Edmondson's trial took place over 8 days in February. Stephanie Vio, who asked for a publication ban on her name to be lifted, told the court she was 19 when Edmondson first exposed himself to her and later assaulted her in his sleeping quarters on board a Canadian Navy ship in 1991. She first told her story to CBC News 9 months before Edmondson was charged.
He removed all my clothes, and then he turned me around and he raped me. There's no other way to say it.
Edmondson has pleaded not guilty and denied having any kind of sexual contact with Vio. A judge is expected to deliver his verdict today. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Ottawa.
The Insurance Bureau of Canada says the property loss and other damages from the Jasper wildfire will total more than $880 million. 25,000 people were forced to flee Jasper in Jasper National Park back in July. A third of the town, 350 homes and buildings, were destroyed. It is the second most damaging natural disaster in Canadian history. The first is the 2016 wildfire in Fort McMurray, which resulted in $4 billion in damages. And in just a few hours, the Olympic cauldron in Paris will be lit again. The 2024 Paralympic Games are getting underway. Canada has 126 athletes competing at this year's Games. Kwabena Aduro caught up with some of them ahead of the big event.
Rivard is going to come home for gold for Canada. Para swimmer Aurélie Rivard is no stranger to being on the podium. She is Canada's most decorated para swimmer, winning 5 Paralympic gold medals and 10 overall.
So if I think about like the little girl that I used to be, I can't believe that the person I'm talking about right now is me. But it does feel like it comes with so much pride.
Her teammate Katarina Roxin will make history during these games as Canada's first female swimmer to compete at 5 Paralympic Games. Roxin says this year's team has a good mix of rookies and veterans.
Bringing it together and unifying us as one team. We have a very, very strong team. So I think we're all just looking forward to seeing how each one of us attack each and every single day.
There are 126 athletes competing for Canada in 18 sports at the Paris 2024 Paralympic Games. Wheelchair basketball player Patrick Anderson is competing in his 6th Paralympic Games. He says his team are underdogs in this tournament.
Being underdogs doesn't mean we're not here to win. It just means we got to knock off some big dogs on the way there. So we're going to come out of the gate playing downhill, playing with force.
Anderson and Roxin will be the flag bearers at the opening ceremony later today. A first-time honor for these 2 veteran athletes. Kwabena Aduro, CBC News, Montreal.
And that is the latest national and international news from World Report. For news anytime, go to cbcnews.ca. I'm Rebecca Zandbergen. This is CBC News.
Good morning, Manitoba. Some sunshine this morning, unlike yesterday's cloudy start. We're seeing that through the windows of our studio here in downtown Winnipeg. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is Information Radio. You're on CBC, 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or on YouTube. Well, you were just hearing all about the Paralympic Games. Going to be beginning today in Paris. In the last hour, we heard from one of our local athletes, Leanne Taylor, who's going to compete in the para-triathlon. We asked you this morning to weigh in on what Paralympic sport do you like watching the most and why. So we're getting some comments coming in this year, and we'll hear more about that. In addition, this half hour on this show, we're going to be talking about back to school. We're going to hear how the Winnipeg School Division, the city's largest, is preparing for a school year without cell phones after the province announced that ban earlier this month. So how will the new rules be enforced? And as the division prepares to meet with principals, what's going to be discussed? The superintendent will join us live this half hour. Right now, let's go to Megan Ketchison, who is here with our morning headlines.
Well, good morning. Fire crews are at a fire in the Glen Elm neighborhood off Henderson Highway. They're fighting a fire that is sending smoke into the sky. Fire crews were called to 3 homes on Coburg Avenue between Henderson and Beatrice around 6:40 this morning. There's no word if there are any injuries, but at least 3 of those homes are on fire. Victim and community impact statements will be heard in court today at the sentencing hearing for serial killer Jeremy Skibitsky. The 37-year-old was found guilty of 4 counts of first-degree murder last month. He was convicted in the deaths of 4 Indigenous women. Around 10 victim impact statements from the family members will be read in court. And I'll have more at 8:30.
All right. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Let's find out more about the forecast. Abby, what do you know?
Sunshine across the province. That's what we're getting at this time. 12 degrees in Winnipeg. We should see these mainly sunny skies to stay with us. Then it's going to become breezy near the noon period as the wind picks up. We'll get a high of 26, though it's going to feel warmer with the humidity factored in. And then tonight, some clouds would roll in with some showers late. There's also a risk of thunderstorm in the forecast for tonight. And this shower is going to stay all through till tomorrow and should be ending by noon tomorrow. But up north, we're saying 10 degrees and 11 in Churchill and Thompson. It's misty in Brandon at this time at 10 degrees. Also, we'll see a mix of sun and clouds, and the rest of the southern part of the province, we're hovering between 8 and 13 all the way down to Morris.
All right. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Abby mentioned mist around Brandon. We also understand there might be some fog, and there's calls about fog, Chloe, on the commuter line?
Yeah, we got a call from David who says he's in the Balder area. That's in the municipality of Argyll in southern Manitoba. Foggy, he said, and visibility was even poor due to that fog. So if you're in southern Manitoba, that could be affecting your commute in other areas as well. But if you're traveling around Balder, you might have some poor visibility due to that fog. So travel safely and make sure you're keeping those lights on. Other than that, not much happening on the commute. If you do spot something that is slowing you down, let us know. Call our commuter line 204-788-3093.
8:13 is the time right now. I'm Marcy Marcoux. So thanks so much for being here. Well, I mentioned next week, back to school for the largest division in the city of Winnipeg. Winnipeg School Division. Whether you're a parent or a kid, you already know that the first day of school is fast approaching. This year, though, school administrators have something extra to figure out. They have spent the weeks leading up to the return of school trying to figure out how the cell phone ban that the province put in place is actually going to be able to be enforced. Matt Henderson is superintendent of the Winnipeg School Division. That's the largest in the province, in fact. He says in the weeks leading up to first day, he has been spending time with educators as they try and find some answers to that question. And we're grateful he's found some time to be with us on CBC. Good morning.
Good morning.
So I know you're still figuring things out, but right now, what can you tell us about the rules on the cell phone ban and what they're going to look like at school in your division?
Well, we're, on Monday, we brought together middle years principals and vice principals to really think about it. All of our principals, as part of their summer reading package in sort of preparation for what we thought might be coming, they all read The Anxious Generation, and we've been talking about it for a while. So on Monday, we brought middle years school leaders together. This morning, we'll be bringing all of our principals and vice principals to really think about not necessarily bans or anything like that, but how is it that we can create cultures in our schools where students aren't necessarily looking at screens all day long, and where we are actually designing experiences where kids can think deeply, where they can create using technology as opposed to consume, and where they can feel that they're part of, they belong to a robust community. And so we're having those conversations because you can't just take these addictive devices out of the hands of kids and not replace it with something. We need to be able to be, as educators, educative and actually design not only experiences, but school cultures that will really provide joyful opportunities for children.
So the rules, just so listeners, are on the same page here, the rules set out by the province state that while high school students can use their phones during free time, not in class, and kids in lower grades like 7 and 8 can't have their phones out at all during the day at school. It sounds like what you're saying is, you said you can't just take the phones away on day one. So will you not be taking the phones away on day one? Like, what's the plan for the start?
Oh no, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to misread. Like we are, absolutely telling families, and we'll be sending some communications out on Friday about what the expectations are. No, we will be abiding by the directive from the Minister of Education, where K to 8 there will be no phones, and while students are on campus, and certainly in 9 to 12 that we don't want to see them in class. Our schools have already been engaging in these practices for years now, and now it's just this provides Winnipeg School Division with an opportunity to really solidify our policies and practices and to support teachers and principals in this work. So the tricky part for Winnipeg School Division, I think it's an opportunity, is that we have a variety of configurations of schools. So we have K to 8, we have K to 9, we have 7 to 8, 7 to 9, and we have a number of 7 to 12 schools. And so this is really about, thinking about how do we ensure that all of our learners know the expectations, that our families are partners in this, and that we are not making it punitive, but certainly making it, allowing students to be part of the process. We'll be sending out some communications on Friday so that we get family and student feedback on this. We can't just sort of say, here's the edict. But we need to make sure that we're hearing from all of our families.
What does it practically look like, especially because you said you've already been doing some of this? What does it practically look like? I appreciate you're ironing out details, but phones at the door, leave phones in the office. If you have a kid with a smartwatch, where do the physical devices go? And then who's responsible in the school setting for enforcing the rules?
Yeah. Well, I think, and we're really clarifying it in our community about mobile devices. You mentioned smartwatches. A smartwatch with an SD card is just as powerful as a cell phone, or tablets, or now that there's smart glasses coming off of the assembly lines, or a MacBook can do very similar things to a cell phone. So we're really looking at mobile devices. But we're asking, our children and families, K to 8, leave it at home, put it in your locker. Some teachers have phone hotels, and depending on if the school may not have lockers, depending on their configuration. So we'll work with, it's one student at a time, one family at a time, one school at a time. But K to 8, they should not be in classes. And in high schools, we just don't want to see them. So whether that's in their backpack or whatever bag they have, they should be there. When you go into classrooms that cook, and where there is significant deep learning happening, there isn't an issue with phones. And so that's what we want to scale across the division, is just powerful learning where kids are so ramped up, so hyped up because they're so engrossed that grabbing a phone is the last thing they want to do.
I want to ask you a couple of questions of critics of this. So one of them is a criticism of the ban, saying it deprives kids of the chance to learn media literacy. You've already nodded to this. But can you elaborate on why what you think of that criticism and what your response is to it?
Yeah, and I understand that. I think the horse is out of the barn on this one. When you look at the overwhelming peer-reviewed evidence about the harm that not only the devices but apps and social media cause on our children, we have to put an immediate stop to the harm. I mean, these phones, and particularly the addictive nature of the apps, are disrupting learning, they're disrupting development, they're disrupting good mental health. And sometimes as adults, we have to say, no, we're not going to engage this, and we're going to stop. As a teacher and a principal, I was always in conversation with learners to say, how is it that we can create using technology as opposed to kind of just consuming and being sold and sort of kind of kowtowing to the technology oligarchs who don't necessarily care about the welfare of our children. And so I would push back a little bit on that and say, no, it's time for the adults to say no. Yes, we always want to be educative, but when we're causing harm, just like we've done with smoking or alcohol or other things, we say, no, we can't do that, but we'll educate at the same time.
This is such an interesting topic because yesterday on the show, we had a clinical psychologist on who specializes in children. And, we were talking about how the absence of screens could actually induce anxiety in some kids. Because when the phone has been there for some kids, it's sort of like it's aligned to a caregiver. Maybe it's aligned to a support app. Whatever it is about the phone, it can also provide sort of a mental safe space just for some kids. How will you address kids who will struggle in that way, or others who may just have straight withdrawal because they're on these things all the time?
Right. I mean, I think that's an interesting statement, right? We're actually, doing something where learners may be in withdrawal of being looking at that phone every 10 seconds, and I think that you're actually outlining the problem here. But yeah, no, I think we always want to make sure that we're addressing the concerns of individual families and to work with individual families. Winnipeg School Division, we have over 100 clinicians, and we allot more in our budget to student services per capita than any other division. And so we're hyper aware of some of the mental health issues that may come out of this, good and bad, in the immediate.
And just to interject, are you talking to then some of those support workers and counselors about that specifically, the mental health aspects with kids and how to deal with it?
Yeah, well, that's why we're engaging with principals right now, right? And we're engaging with parents and children at the end of the week to be able to say, what are the things that we're not thinking about? It's interesting. I live in Winnipeg School Division, so and when I walk my dog or something like that, kids are always coming up to me and saying, hey, have you thought about this? And I've been talking to lots of children in the division, and they've been saying, have you thought about this? You better make sure that there's more devices. You better make sure that not everything's on Google Classroom. And so we really need to hear from families. We need to hear from kids.
So they're talking about wanting more equipment in the classroom just to sort of fill the gap of the fact that everyone's not holding something in their hand, or those that have the phones aren't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Has the Winnipeg School Division had conversations? I'm curious about the impact of the ban could have on bullying and cyberbullying.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if Monday mornings for principals are often sort of a time where they're cleaning up over the weekend of sort of online shenanigans and behavior that is harmful, and so principals are often trying to figure out what happened on Snapchat or different platforms, and kind of cleaning that up and sorting it out and educating children and families, because these social media platforms are ripe for adolescents, early adolescent children, whose brains aren't fully formed to say some pretty awful stuff. And so I think this is a welcomed opportunity to educate children about face-to-face, how do we treat each other? How do we ensure that everyone belongs? How do we ensure that we all love each other in really healthy ways? Thank
you for being with us this morning. Enjoy the rest of the couple days you have left officially of summer.
Thanks so much, Marcy. Take care.
You too. That's Matt Henderson, Superintendent of the Winnipeg School Division. If you're a family and you want to weigh in on this, or if you're an educator, we'd love to hear from you as well. 788-3205. The new cell phone ban in schools goes into place for this school year.
Psst. Hey, Tiger.
Yeah, Polar Bear?
Is everyone gone?
You bet.
Let's party!
When the Assiniboine Park Zoo closes, the party starts. Brew at the Zoo is back September 13th. Local brewers, live music, one great night. Brew at the Zoo, proudly sponsored by CBC.
Hey, settle down, monkeys.
Visit cbc.ca/Manitoba/community for details.
Sorry, laughing at the promo guy. 8:25 is the time right now on 89.3 FM, 990 AM on the app or YouTube. So you're counting down. The time that you want to have in your head is 12:30 local time. All eyes on Paris as the Paralympic Games begin. We asked you, what Paralympic sport do you love watching the most and why? And a number you writing in. Suzanne Brennan writing in triathlon. And I know we have Leanne Taylor competing from Winnipeg, so a lot of people watching her. Zenith Colleen saying Oak Bluff is proud of Leanne Taylor. Sean Ennis is going to be watching wheelchair rugby and murder ball, something special Sean writing in about. And Crystal Simmons, this is interesting because Crystal's actually watching an athlete from Bermuda. Bermuda's only Paralympian this year who will play bocce, and that is Yuche de Silva Andrade. So Crystal's going to keep eyes on that athlete. We're asking you what sport you love watching the best and why. Myself, it's always track. I had the privilege of knowing and going to school with Michelle Stilwell back in the day. So watching her career, of course, becoming one of the most decorated Paralympians of all time was really something special. But just love watching everybody on the track. So let us know. 788-3205 if you're excited about an athlete, or maybe you're doing a watch party somewhere today to watch those opening ceremonies. Remember, you can stream it all on CBC Gem. Well, we're coming up to news time at 8:30, but we have a bit of time to slide in a little bit of music for our Wednesday morning. Jamie Fine's new song is an ode to beautiful summer nights. This is Your Like.
It's too much, our love can't go to waste. One look from you is all it takes. My lips on yours, no better taste. Let's not throw it away. Baby, I'm on it. If you really want it, I'll give you everything I got. I knew when I saw it, how you caught me falling. It's even better than I thought. Your hands on mine till it's over. Take all of me, it was never mine. I can finally breathe when you're close, 'cause you're like a breath of fresh air on a summer night. No need to fix what ain't broken. Our stories old that we're meant to write. I'm waiting on for this moment. You're like a breath of fresh air on a summer night. You're like a breath of fresh air on a summer night. I think this bed was made for us. Let's stay right here, no need to rush. Your skin is perfect to the touch. I can't get enough, 'cause baby I'm on it. If you really want it, I'll give you everything I got. I knew when I saw it, how you caught me falling. And it's even better than I thought, yeah. Your hands on mine till it's over. Take all of me, it was never mine. I can finally breathe when you're close, 'cause you're like a breath of fresh air on a summer night. Your hands on mine till it's over. Take all of me, it was never mine. I can finally breathe when you're close, 'cause you're like a breath of fresh air on a summer night. You're like a breath of fresh air on a summer night. You're like a breath of fresh air on a summer night. You're like a breath of fresh air on a summer night. Your hands on mine till it's over. Take all of me, it was never mine. I can finally breathe when you're close, 'cause you're like a breath of fresh air on a summer night. No need to fix what ain't broken. Our stories old that we're meant to write. I'm waiting on for this moment. You're like a breath of fresh air on a summer night. You're like a breath of fresh air on a summer night. You're like a breath of fresh air on a summer night. You're like a breath of fresh air on a summer night.
Out of Ottawa, it's Jamie Fine. Tune's called You're Like on CBC. I'm Marcy Marcusa with our team here at Information Radio. We're grooving along to that one. In Winnipeg, sunny, 12 degrees, a high of 26 today. Still some fog reported around Brandon. It's 10, and Thompson sunny and 10 degrees as well. Commute's been pretty good. 788-3093. We're late in the drive, but if you need us, we are still here for you. Paralympics getting underway today. Opening ceremony, as we've been mentioning here, at 1:30 Eastern, which is 12:30 our time. You can check it out on CBC television. It will stream on CBC Gem on Sports Online as well. Or if you've got the really easy to use, by the way, CBC Paris 2024 app, you can find it there as well. But right now, time is 8:30.
This is CBC News. Good morning. I'm Megan Ketchison in Winnipeg at 8:30. Sunny skies and 14. Hot and muggy today, mainly sunny and a high of 26. Fire crews are on Coburg Avenue in Glen Elm this morning, where a number of houses are on fire. Crews were called to the residential street just off Henderson Highway around 6:40 this morning. More than a dozen fire trucks and police crews are on scene. At least 3 houses are impacted by the fire. There's no word if anyone's hurt. A judge will hear today from family members of a Winnipeg serial killer's victims. It's part of the formal sentencing process for 37-year-old Jeremy Skibitsky. He was found guilty last month of 4 counts of first-degree murder. The convictions carry an automatic life sentence with no chance of parole for at least 25 years. Skibitsky admitted to killing Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, Rebecca Contois, and a 4th unidentified woman given the name Mushkede Bishike Ikwe Iban. Sandra Delaron advocates for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. She says Skibitsky's crimes are one example of a serious problem.
We have an opportunity as a community to talk about what this case has meant to all of us in terms of our safety and our well-being. And we know that for all Manitobans, this case had a serious impact.
Delaron will address the court to highlight how the crimes have impacted the broader community. People who rely on bus service in Manitoba's north are reeling at the news that Mahihikan bus line is shutting down. The service replaced Greyhound bus lines when it shut down in the province in 2018. In a notice on Facebook, the company says, despite our best efforts to sustain operations, economic circumstances have forced us to make this difficult decision. Many rely on the bus, come to Winnipeg for medical appointments. Andre Murphy is the mayor of the PAW.
That's a vital service for us in the north, and I don't think people understand that we really can't not have a bus service in the north.
Murphy says he's reached out to a number of levels of government for a solution to bus transportation issues in the north. The company says the bus will cease operation September 6th. A school board in Steinbach has been appointed a special advisor by the province. The Hanover School Division's Board of Trustees faced scrutiny in April after passing a hiring policy some called discriminatory. Now, Manitoba Education Minister Nello Altamar says retiring Winnipeg School Superintendent Kelly Barkman will advise the board. He says the hiring policy wasn't a factor in Barkman's appointment, but added a goal of his work will be to ensure student inclusivity.
We just want the board to continue to be really effective at creating safe, inclusive schools for all members of their community. And Kelly has extensive experience in doing that and can provide some insight.
Altamar says Barkman's work at Hanover will last as long as it needs to. In international news, Israeli security forces are carrying out a major military operation in the occupied West Bank. It got underway overnight with a series of raids and airstrikes that Palestinian health officials say have claimed at least 9 lives. Sasha Petrusik has more.
Israel has launched one of the largest operations in many, many years in the northern West Bank, in particular 2 of the most volatile centers there, Jenin and Tulkarm. They moved in shortly after midnight with drones and helicopters, also on the ground, not only with special forces, but bulldozers to block roads and to seal off a number of facilities, including the main hospital in Jenin. In addition to that, there was another parallel operation, city of Tubas, which is in the Jordan Valley. And all of this, according to the Israeli military, was aimed at going after militants, especially Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad militants, who they say were preparing for some sort of immediate threat to Israeli civilians. And they said that they had to launch this operation. Sasha Petrusik, CBC News in northern Israel.
The organization that represents 26 northern Manitoba First Nations will elect a leader today in Winnipeg. Manitoba Kiiwetinowi Okimakanak, also known as MKO, is holding its General Assembly at the RBC Convention Centre. The annual gathering had to be relocated due to a number of wildfires in some parts of the north. 2 candidates are vying for the position of Grand Chief. The incumbent, Garrison Settee, hails from Pimicikamak Cree Nation and has led MKO for 2 terms. The challenger is Chris Baker, the former chief and headman of Opipon Na Piwin Cree Nation. The voting happens at 1 o'clock today. And that's the CBC News from Winnipeg. You can always find more on our website at cbc.ca/Manitoba.
Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
All right, our live crew this morning, thanks to Megan Ketcherson and Joni Nicolo out in our news department. Big thanks to Brad Lillies, as well as Abby Adeyemi, who we'll talk to in a moment behind the glass. And thanks to Chloe Friesen, who's here with a last look at what's going on in the traffic situation.
Yeah, good morning. So I'll leave folks commuting with this. Got a call from Fred, who's traveling on Route 90, just around Notre Dame, the Red River Notre Dame campus. Things are, he described as a parking lot, so very slow moving on Route 90, just around Notre Dame there. Red River students are back to school, so that could be a factor, but if you're experiencing slow traffic, be prepared for it.
All right, thanks, Chloe.
No problem.
And Abby.
A sunny and muggy day ahead with warm temperatures, a cold, cloudy evening. and even some showers will be coming. But that's what we're going to get today.
All right, Abby, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for listening to Information Radio each and every morning. I'm Marcy Marcusa. This is CBC, and The Current's coming up next. Take care.